tonight is January 19th, and welcome everyone to the Town Council meeting. Ms. Neese, could you do the roll call?
Thank you and good evening. Councilmember Rennie, Vice Mayor Rennie. Councilmember Hudas.
Here.
Councilmember Risto.
Here.
Councilmember Badami.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Sayak.
Here. Thank you. And as many of you may have already heard, we are planning to do presentations tonight. And this is our opportunity to thank our outgoing commissioners that have served on our boards, commissions, and committees. And so we are hoping to promote everyone to a panelist and ask you to please turn on your your video, so that we can at least see you. Normally this is live and we have a nice opportunity to just thank everyone, but regardless if it's live or on Zoom, we just want to extend our gratitude and our thanks to those that have served the town on a various committee. And if we could just identify who those residents are. And I'm going to
So Mayor, I can help you if you'd like.
that would be great. Thank you.
Okay. So from Complete Streets and Transportation Commission, it would be Maria Risto. For the Council Finance Committee, it would be Terry Duryea. I do not see Mr. Dickel or Mr. Tinsley in attendance at this meeting. They were at the previous one. For Historic Preservation Committee, it would be Nancy Durham, but I do not see her in attendance. I do not see Larry Maggio in attendance. For Personnel, Parks Commission, Chris Mullen, I do not see in attendance. Building Board of Appeals is Chris Ray, not in attendance. Planning Commission would be Mary Badami and Matthew Hudas. And then the Sales Tax Oversight Committee would be Paul Lowrick and Mark Secchia, neither one of which were able to attend.
Okay. Well, hopefully our gratitude and our thank yous go to each and every one of them, whether you are participating via Zoom, KCAT, or have the opportunity to hear this later. But as we have said numerous times, it takes a village. It takes several one of us giving our service to the town, and we thank each and every one of you for what you have contributed to the well-being of our town of Los Gatos. So thank you. Okay. So now we begin our appointment process. And as we have said, it does take a village, and thank you to all those that have applied to our commissions and committees. If you have not been chosen during this round, we do hope that you stay engaged, you stay involved, and that you apply at the next opportunity. We're very fortunate to have great representation and great applicants. I don't know, I can't speak for everyone else, but I had a difficult decision today. But thank you for each and every one of you that did apply, and we hope to see your future application. So Ms. Neese.
Okay. For the Complete Streets and Transportation Committee, Rob Moore is appointed unanimously. For the Personnel Board, Larry Maggio is appointed with Sayak, Rennie, and Risto voting, and Hudas and Badami voting none of the above. For the Planning Commission, Jeff Suzuki and Emily Thomas are appointed with Rennie, Risto, and Sayak voting for both of them. Hudas and Badami voting for Steve Raspy and Ryan Rosenberg. And now we'll move on to the Finance Commission. And let me, one moment, please.
And actually, for those that are watching, if I could ask you, Ms. Neese, or Mr. Schultz, to explain why this process is different for those that are just paying attention now.
I will defer to the attorney to do that.
Okay. The Finance Commission is different than any of our other commissions and boards because it was a measure that was passed. Measure A was passed last November, which is now an ordinance that's been approved by the voters. And that measure calls out a different procedure. Instead of council picking the boards and commissions by a majority, they actually select an individual. Each one gets to select one individual to serve on the committee. The ordinance spells out exactly the term for each of the initial members, and after that, then they would be 4-year terms. So the initial terms are that 2 of the members will serve 4-year terms, 1 will serve 3-year term, 1 will serve a 2-year term, and 1 will serve a 1-year term. Prior to the meeting, staff drew names out of a hat to determine the order that council would pick in and which term they received. I will defer to the clerk, otherwise I'd have to get that staff report, as to the order of it and the term that will be selected by each individual council member. And then next year, the one term, the person that had only a 1-year term, that term would then become a 4-year term. So after these initial terms, they would then be reevaluated, and that individual council member would select somebody for a 4-year term.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz.
Thank you. So the order will be Maria Risto will select for a 4-year term. Then Matthew Hudis will select for a 4-year term. Then Rob Rennie will select for a 1-year term. Then Mariko Sayak will select for a 3-year term. And Mary Badami will select for a 2-year term. So if council is ready, we'll start with Maria Risto and her choice.
Yes, I'd select Lorene Huddleston.
Thank you. Matthew?
I select Rick Tinsley.
Vice Mayor Rennie?
And I'd just like to say that, this is a really challenging process for us council members. 9 applicants and we only get to vote once is very difficult. All very, good applicants. Normally there's 5 spots, so, more than half get appointed. But when I have to make my choice, I have to pick one from so many good applicants. So I find it very difficult. And I'm not able to express, all the others that I think are good. Well, I'm trying to express now, but so just a preamble for all those that didn't get chosen, that, I wish we could give you a little more affirmation by being able to vote more times than once out of 9. I'm going to go with Ron Dickel.
Thank you. Mayor Sayak?
I want to echo Vice Mayor's comments and sentiments. It was exciting to see how many great applicants we received. My vote tonight will go to Deborah Weinstein.
Thank you. And Councilmember Badami?
Kyle Park.
I'm sorry, Kyle Park?
Kyle Park.
Thank you. So Lorene Huddleston and Rick Tinsley will be appointed for 4-year terms. Ron Dickel will be appointed for a 1-year term. Deborah Weinstein will be appointed for a 3-year term. And Kyle Park will be appointed for a 2-year term. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nace. And thank you again to all those that applied, and congratulations to those that were selected to be on a commission. We now move to council and manager matters. Actually, if I could start with Town Manager Provetti.
Thank you. Good evening, council and Los Gatos community. I hope that 2021 is a good year for all of you. During the past month since we've last been together, staff have been very busy on the COVID front. We continue to partner with the county on a number of different efforts. First of all, we will be doing another pop-up testing site next week on the 27th of January at the Adult Recreation Center. Appointments start becoming available tomorrow. Last time in December, we did sell out, so please make your appointment early. Second, we've been in communication with the county regarding their rollout plans for the vaccines. So we really urge all residents to stay in contact with our public health department website. The town also has its dedicated COVID website with important links to vaccine availability. So please monitor those options. And then third, I just want to comment on mask wearing. As everyone knows, masks are required in the town of Los Gatos and in all cities within the state of California and within our county. So it is very important that everybody wear a mask and follow all of the orders that our public health office has designated. So we do urge you to do this. The DA's office and the county has a complaint line, and we are working collaboratively with them to address any issues in the town. So again, please wear your masks, and we'll have an opportunity later this evening as the council talks about economic recovery to determine whether or not we also, like the city of Carmel, might want to put out signs. They did so in an educational manner. They ended up giving out very few citations. So they're more in an education mode, just like we are. And that might be something that we can do, and we don't need any kind of ordinance to put out signs requiring mask wearing. And that concludes my report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Town Manager Pravetti. Okay, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Since our last council member meeting in December, so for the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, also known as BACMed, my appointment starts February 1st, but I attended the board meetings on 12/16 and 1/13. 1/13 was a little bit more of an orientation meeting where I got to participate a little bit, even though I wasn't a voting member yet. I attended on 12/17 the Valley Water Public Trails meeting, where they collected survey input from participants about the competing interests of a creek for trails, riparian habitat, or flood protection. That was an interesting meeting. On 1/5, Rob Stump gave me an update on the ad hoc wildfire committee. And thank you to all those that have done a lot of good work on that. I also rode my bicycle up Foster and Cypress to check out the clearing of the brush and the eucalyptus trees that have been removed. So it's starting to look good up there. On 1/5, I also attended the MTC ABAG RENA methodology webinar to learn a little more about that. On 1/7, I attended State Senator Scott Wiener's webinar with the Kids Foundation, where we got an update on the legislation related to mental health care and kids' mental health care. On 1/7, I attended the VTA board meeting as an alternate. And for Silicon Valley Clean Energy Authority, I attended the Risk Oversight Committee meeting on 1/11 and the board meeting on 1/13. At the board meeting, we approved a new long-term contract for 50 megawatts of solar for a new facility. And it will add more clean energy to the grid, combined with the more than $1 billion that Silicon Valley Clean Energy has invested. It will now be 55% of our power supply from new facilities, renewable energy products in 2024. By then, in the past, we've seen some naysayers saying that we're just buying existing green energy and we're not making a difference. And I wanted to point out that 55% of our load by 2024 is going to be coming from new facilities that didn't exist. Well, none of them really exist yet, because our first ones are going to come on, I think, in 2022. So we are making a big difference if you think about it that way. Also, Silicon Valley Clean Energy Authority has a $50 rebate available for induction cooktops and discounts on LED light bulbs and smart power strips through their Appliance Assist, part of the Silicon Valley Clean Energy's eHub. eHub is a set of online tools to help customers use their clean power to to lower their carbon footprint. On January 12th, I attended the Cities Association orientation for I kind of new members, although I've been on it for a long time as an alternate or member. And on 112, I attended the Youth Commissioner meeting with the mayor and made some comments. That was a good meeting to attend. Enjoyed that a lot. 113, I did a kind of a meet and greet phone call with the El Camino Hospital government relations person. Learned a little more about El Camino Hospital and that hospital special district. 114, I attended the VTA PAC meeting. On 114, I also attended the Cities Association Selection Committee, where our very own Matthew Hudis was appointed to the Interoperability Committee. I'm tired just thinking about it. That's it.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Yes, Councilmember Badami.
Been a busy 2 weeks. On January 7th, I also met with Rob Stump and received an update on the wildfire ad hoc committee. That same day, that night, I met with the General Plan Update Committee along with Councilmember Risto. We reviewed updates to the land use and housing element, and we will be moving on to the community design element on Thursday. So I am hoping that we will get more input from the community. So please join us on Thursday night at 7 p.m. On January 13th, I met with the Conceptual Development Advisory Committee along with Councilmember Hudis. We reviewed 2 conceptual proposals for development at Roberts Road and Los Gatos Boulevard. One proposal was for construction of an office building with underground parking. The second proposal was for a multifamily dwelling in a mixed-use project with approximately 41 units, and that would also be with underground parking as well. On January 13th, I also met with the General Plan Committee along with Councilmember Risto, and we reviewed and recommended approval for a general plan amendment for residential property on Tate Avenue to the Central Business District. On January 14th, I met with the West Valley Waste Management. It was more of an introduction than anything else. We did discuss Senate Bill 1383, which requires compliance with an organic recycling program to be implemented by January 1st of 2022. Yesterday, I attended the Black Lives Matter protest at the Town Plaza. Mayor Sayak and Town Attorney Robert Schultz were also in attendance. There were speeches honoring Martin Luther King, and it concluded with a march down North Santa Cruz Ave. It was peaceful with one minor incident skillfully resolved by our mayor. That's all I have. Thank you.
I don't know if it was skillfully or stupidly.
Well, I think you got a commendation from a member of the public.
Councilmember Hudis.
Thank you. Let's see, I participated in the Conceptual Development Advisory Committee meeting, and I met with a representative of El Camino Hospital and got familiar with their operations in town and discussed emergency communications with them. I attended the League of Cities selection committee meeting, and I'm looking forward to serving as a representative on the Interoperability Authority. I also met with some residents. I met with the applicant for item 7, and I met with the Chamber of Commerce representative and a number of residents concerning business recovery and the issue and concern about mask wearing. And that's it.
Thank you. And Councilmember Risto?
Yes. I've attended a number of meetings, not much worth reporting. I did meet with Rob Stump and get an update on wildfire preparedness, and did hike up Foster Road yesterday, and the changes are remarkable. So very impressive with the work that's being done and how we can move forward. And I have to say, with the winds last night and today, where 4 fires, I think, were sparked in Santa Cruz County, you know, these are the things that really bring it home, what we have to be doing. As a representative to the West Valley Sanitation District, I attended my first meeting there. It went rather quickly, but the most significant thing to me was I was then appointed as the representative to the Sewer Advisory Board. So I've got lots of new things to learn. And I met with a number of residents to discuss requests for a mask mandate and spoken with a number of business people. Thank you.
Thank you. And the only other thing I'll add to the many activities that have already been highlighted, the Cities Association of Santa Clara County made decisions on their priority areas for 2021. We decided to focus on 4: COVID-19 recovery and business retainment, transportation, that's a large umbrella, but part of that is the ongoing work that VTA is doing for our area. Racial justice, that encompasses many things, but focusing on affordable housing, as well as any areas that all of the police departments in Santa Clara County can work together on. Our own police chief is involved in those conversations as well. And then housing and homelessness as a 4th priority topic that is very large, but we all know is topmost priority given just the housing crisis that we're in. So thank you all for the work that you've been doing for the past couple of weeks, and the year has only just begun. Okay, with that, we now move to our consent items. And we have items 1 through 5. These are items that have been determined to be non-controversial and can be approved with 1 motion, unless anyone would like to pull it. Anyone, council members? Seeing none, anyone from the public that would like to pull items 1 through 5 on consent? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion. Yes, Councilmember Badami?
I move to approve the consent items 1 through 5.
Second.
Okay, yeah, second by Vice Mayor Rennie. And I'll just call the question. Councilmember Risto?
Aye.
Councilmember Hudas?
Aye.
Councilmember Badami?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rennie?
Aye.
I vote aye as well, and all 5 items pass. So thank you very much. We are now at our portion of the meeting under verbal communications where members of the public can share items of concern for no more than 3 minutes. Just a reminder to those that are attending, this is an opportunity to either share something, flag something, or ask to speak further with staff on. This is not an area where we will have an discussion on or engagement on. So just wanted to give that caveat for those that are attending for the very first time. So is there anyone that would like to speak under verbal communications? Okay, I have several. So Kimberly Snyder, John Shepherdson, and Amy. If we can have Kimberly Snyder start first. Yes, Ms. Snyder, are you ready?
Oh, you know what? I'm so sorry. This is Amy Davis. I think my
Oh.
name might say Kimberly. I just realized that, and I'm so sorry for the delay, but
No
I'm
worries.
ready.
Okay, please join me. Welcome, Ms. Davis.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. Good evening, Town Council and Los Gatos community. My name is Amy Davis, and I am the newly minted Executive Director at New Museum Los Gatos, right across the plaza. And I'm so happy to be here today to thank you on behalf of the New Museum Los Gatos board and staff for forgiving our rent during the unprecedented events of 2020. 2020 began under dire predictions for museums. The American Alliance of Museums estimated that 1 in 3 museums in the nation were at risk of closing forever due to the hardships of the pandemic. But with your support, New Mu is positioned to weather the pandemic and build on our successes of 55 years as a part of the Los Gatos community. We've been able to retain essential staff members, begin an exciting series of virtual exhibitions and programs, and reconfigure some of our internal spaces. And so I want to express that the town's rent forgiveness has been a true lifeline in all of these efforts. So thank you. I wanted to share that we are all dreaming about the day that we can reopen and welcome our community in person once more. So I ask you to imagine, with ongoing free admission for Los Gatos residents, NUMU will be positioned as an inclusive place of inspiration, creativity, and cultural understanding, with thought-provoking exhibitions, art and history experiences, and gatherings that will help heal our community. We believe that art and culture are the second responders in times of crisis and can help our community recover from the trauma of the pandemic. And we really want to be on the front line of that recovery and healing. So we will surely have a memorable experience when that happens, and we need to pave the runway for this. Even when a vaccine is rolled out, we'll surely need time to recoup losses and work towards our sustainabilities to continue serving the Los Gatos community. We will have been closed to the public for at least a full year with no income from programs, resulting in an estimated $78,000 loss in revenue. So continued rent forgiveness from the town of Los Gatos would make a significant impact to sustain us and help us reopen as soon as possible. So we really value our relationship with the town of Los Gatos. Thank you so much for your support through rent forgiveness and your ongoing partnership. And we look forward to our continued dialogue with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and welcome to your new role.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. John Shepherdson.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So greetings. So I'm a number of points I just want to run through quickly, kind of as a checklist. One, the objects that are lit up in the plaza and the Civic Center, I think that they're really wonderful. Secondly, I did a little research, and including Santa Clara County, there's various municipalities that have declared racism a public health care crisis. And I don't know if Los Gatos has passed a similar resolution, but I would encourage, if it hasn't been done, I would encourage Los Gatos to do that. Santa Clara County has done it, and a number of other municipalities in California. Thirdly, just as a sort of heads up, I was jogging near the high school, and there's some homeless campers near the high school, between the high school and the freeway. Next point is, we got this and the entrance to North Santa Cruz Avenue. There's in the new development, there's a sign that says downtown Los Gatos, but you don't really see it very well. I don't know if something could be done to better the lighting so it's easier to see. Maybe add the word historic. And this is kind of off the wall, but in the maintenance yard, there's a large red windmill. I guess that was at one of the properties a long time ago. I don't know if that red windmill could be moved from the maintenance yard to somewhere in town, in a more prominent place. It's a sort of historical object. The tracks at Fisher and Los Gatos, could they be open up for use? Maybe in the afternoons, something could be done on that. Next point, and I know I've heard that some of you are riding your bikes on the Los Gatos Creek Trail. There's one point when you're going south and before Old Town, and there's a large cement wall on the left-hand side facing the freeway, and it's maybe something could be done with that, some kind of painting of some kind, because it's just a long slab of cement and it's not very artistic. 37 seconds. West Valley College, they're installing solar panels in their parking lot, and I just happened to see that, and it's touting how much energy they're going to save. And my penultimate point is that the crosswalk signs on North Santa Cruz Avenue and Main, I noticed, I was in Saratoga, and they have the similar signs that are in the middle of that we have in the middle of the road, but they have a yellow reflector on the top. So it's a little easier to see. And I got 2 seconds, so I'm done.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherdson. That's a comprehensive list that we're taking notes on. And you may see some of this actually happen. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Amy.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. I would just like to say I definitely approve of what Laurel was talking about earlier when it comes to signage similar to the town or city of Carmel regarding wearing masks. It's clear that from science and from looking at what's going on in other countries, especially Asian countries, that if everybody would wear their masks when you're out in public, and you can't maintain your 6 feet of distance, like when you're walking downtown, if we could all wear our masks, I think it's clear that would help reduce the rate of COVID. And then we can open up all our restaurants and increase our capacity in the stores. I mean, I, for one, am looking forward to having a drink outside somewhere when everything reopens. So I'm definitely in favor of these signs and maybe some enforcement, or at least I'd like to see our police department wearing their masks when they're out in the public at the farmer's market or walking through downtown. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. I see no other hands raised in our attendees list, so I'll give it a couple more seconds. Jeffrey Suzuki. And if anyone else would like to speak, please raise your hand. We'll move you over. Otherwise, we'll be closing our verbal communications. Jeff Suzuki.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. First, I want to say that it's an honor to be appointed as a planning commissioner, so thank you. I wanted to spend some time discussing the reputation of Los Gatos. The recent incidents of violence only brings further concern. On January 6th, an alleged assault occurred against a Stop the Steal protester, and the alleged assailant was restrained by nearby protesters and immediately arrested upon the arrival of police, and he was held in jail without bail. 4 days earlier, a full glass bottle was thrown in the face of a minor. The incident filmed from multiple angles. Witnesses allege that the minor received some comments before the assault. Dog eater, communist, go back to China. And he had to be treated by the EMT for his cuts and bruises. Both of these incidents of violence are reprehensible, but in one case, the police questioned the assailant and simply allowed them to walk. With this existing information, many members of our community and I cannot help but think that this further demonstrates a double standard for our police and only solidifies the reputation of Los Gatos as a wealthy but racist town. And with the data that already exists, our police department disproportionately arrests Hispanics, Latinos in town by a large margin, and Hispanics and Latinos and Black people outside of town. We have to do something about this. And in a lot of cases, when we try to discuss these issues, I hear that the police officers themselves are good people who often go beyond their assigned duties. And I have no doubt that this is the case. But there is something about our apartment that has to be reformed. Something has to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Ali Miano.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. I just want to support what Jeff and Amy said in regard to the police department. For instance, it does seem like the police action that is typically taken in town is very uneven. It definitely seems to be biased toward not prosecuting somebody who might be associated with white supremacy, but yes, perhaps policing those involved in, say, a Black Lives Matter protest in kind of an unusual way. I was surprised when I was walking home from yesterday's protest to see 3 police SUVs in the parking lot across from my house at St. Mary's Church. I wondered what they were doing there for a protest that involved some 50-odd, peaceful folks, the barbershop incident notwithstanding. Nothing came out of that. And yes, there's a pattern of this kind of thing that goes back decades. And I would like to see, hopefully, this new council take this issue on and actually do something about it, investigate what's going on in our police department. Obviously, what we saw on January 6th and learning that some of those, some people would say rioters, others say terrorists, some of them come from a law enforcement background and or a military background. And unfortunately, they've gone by the wayside and are applying their training in harmful ways that go against their constitutional responsibilities. So I would like to know that this is not going to happen, at least in Los Gatos, because this is a place that, we can all do something about. Maybe we don't have the power to control what's going on in Washington, but certainly those of you on the town council have some power to take care of this kind of thing right here and make sure that our police officers are going to defend the Constitution and treat visitors and residents and all people here in Los Gatos with the same respect and protection, equal protection under the law, as they say. So it looks like I'm running out of time, but yeah, I want to also support everybody wearing a mask. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will close public comments. I'll see if there's any others. And then I would like our town manager to make some comments. But real quick, any other attendees that would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, I do want to just ask our manager if you would like to provide any comments based on what has been heard and share any information as to what we are doing to protect our little town. As someone said, we can't control what's happening nationally, but we can be leaders in Los Gatos, and the efforts that we have put in place, as well as we'll continue to do to ensure that the violence that we're seeing, as well as the hatred that we're seeing, is stopped immediately.
Thank you, Mayor. And let me start by appreciating our 2 commenters who raised these issues. Please know that Los Gatos does not tolerate hate in any form whatsoever. The action that happened, the incident that happened on January 2nd was fully investigated. We received great video from the public, a lot of cooperation and collaboration from witnesses, and all of that information has now been sent to the DA, the District Attorney's Office, for prosecution. So we take hate crimes and hate incidents very seriously here in the town of Los Gatos. That one is being pursued. In terms of the January 6th incident, I believe that one is still under investigation. I don't know if that was actually a no bail jail situation, so I am not at liberty to comment on that piece, but I do want to assure the Los Gatos community that we do not tolerate hate. We've in fact been pushing out messages on social media around our inclusive community resolution and our website and our ongoing commitment to make sure that people of all backgrounds and identities and preferences are welcome here in town. And I do ask that if any member of the community feels at all uncomfortable by an interaction, to please call 911. It's very important that we obtain the data because some of the participants are actually known known members of our community. The DA's office is familiar with them. And so it is important that we all come together to support inclusivity here in Los Gatos. I don't think I'm at liberty to really say much more, Mayor, except our ongoing commitment. And I want to also assure you that the chief has instructed the officers that if they hear hate speech or hear or see any kind of hate activity, that is a need for officer intervention to investigate and take appropriate action. So we're very serious about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Pravetti. And to those members of the public, thank you for your vigilance. And if there are specific incidences or interactions with staff that you feel uncomfortable with, please share them. Our emails are on our website, and as we have created both our town attorney and town manager, there is an independent way to share your concerns with any staff, frankly, not just our police department. Thank you very much, everyone. Yes, Vice Mayor.
I just wanted to point out to a couple of the speakers that the issue of signs is on item number 8. They may not realize that.
Thank you. And now we move to item number 6, which is to consider objections to the proposed abatement of hazardous vegetation for properties listed on the list contained in attachment number 6, staff report 6. Ms. Harkemeyer.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. I am Stephanie with the Parks and Public Works Department, and tonight I'm bringing you this report. December 1st, at the Town Council meeting, a resolution was passed declaring certain hazardous vegetation growing in the town to be a public nuisance. That resolution included the properties where such nuisance exists, and this public hearing was set. Staff is recommending that council consider any objections that have been received up through tonight to the proposed removal of the hazardous vegetation and order the abatement. I wanted you to please note, though, at the item number 55 on the weed abatement commencement report, the APN number is 53704-019 has been removed from the list. Outside of that, there are no other objections that we've received prior to tonight's meeting. This concludes my report, and with me tonight is Brian Rosa. He's the weed abatement inspector from the County of Santa Clara.
Thank you. Thank you both, Stephanie and Brian, for being here. Any questions, council members? Seeing none, is there anyone from our attendee list that would like to speak to this matter? Seeing none, I go back to our council for a question or a motion. Yes, Council Member Badami.
I'll make a motion, and that would be to move to order the abatement of weeds listed on the 2021 Weed Abatement Program Commencement Report, which is attachment 1, with the exception of item number 55, which has been removed.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Council Member Risto, I see your hand up. And so let's call the motion. Council Member Hudis.
Aye.
Council Member Badami.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rennie.
Aye.
Council Member Risto.
Aye.
And I also vote aye, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Hockemeyer, Mr. Rosa, for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, we now move to item number 7. I'm sorry, I lost my agenda.
Jocelyn Shootman will be making that report, Mayor.
Yes, thank you very much. The story poll policy, and Ms. Shootman, thank you. And Ms. Risto, Councilmember Risto.
Yes, I'm sorry. Before this proceeds any further, because the property of the Meadows is within my 500-foot conflict zone, I need to recuse myself from this hearing.
Okay, thank you very much. And I know we know the process of removing you from the panel, and we'll call you back at the next agenda item. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Shootman.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. As part of the presentation this evening, I'd like to first just make a distinction that staff is only discussing the story pole exception tonight, not the project or the merits of the project. The applicant is requesting 4 exceptions to this policy to minimize a nuisance to the neighbors and damage to the existing structures, as well as the potential to cause a threat to public health and safety. The applicant has provided a letter included as attachment 2 that further discusses the reasons for the request for the exception, along with their proposed site plan and story pole plan for the new senior living buildings. The applicant has proposed to install the story poles for 20 days once the application has been scheduled for a planning commission hearing to overlap with the public notice period. If the council is inclined to grant the story pole exception, staff recommends that the council limit the approval to the specific site layout and require any modification to return for a new story pole exception. There is a desk item that was distributed this evening, which includes additional public comments provided after the distribution of the staff report, as well as staff's responses to questions posed by council members. This concludes the staff presentation, but we are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Shootman. Council members, any questions of staff? Yes, Council Member Badami.
I don't have a question, but I need to make the disclosure that I did meet with Frank Rockwood and his team via a Zoom meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for that disclosure. Any other disclosures that would like to be shared, Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I met with the applicant also, I think it was early December. It's been a while ago now.
Okay. Councilmember Hudis?
I met with the applicant.
Okay. And I'm also disclosing that I met with the applicant team as well. Well, thank you very much. Any other questions of staff? Okay, so I'd like to open the public portion of our hearing. And if we could just identify who will be speaking, it looks like Frank Rockwood would. If we can move him over as a panelist, and then Mr. Rockwood, you'll have 5 minutes to speak. Actually, you know what, before we do that, am I correct? I'm looking at our town attorney. Is that 5 minutes or 3 minutes?
It's 5.
5.
For the applicant, and actually this isn't an appeal, so
Right.
Schultz, is it 3 minutes?
Since they're the applicant, they'll have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. So Mr. Rockwood, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Frank Rockwood. I'm with Rockwood Pacific. I'm leading the project team for the rebuilding of Los Gatos Meadows. And I'd like to share with you a PowerPoint deck. I think, great. Just before I'm just going to touch on a handful of slides here. I'm going to have Mark Falga from Kimley Horn make some comments, and David Gates from Gates and Associates make some comments. A key point that I want to emphasize here is the project team has no disagreement with the policy, the intent of the story pole policy. We are not asking to eliminate this, to not have this policy apply, but we do believe that not all of the poles will add to the decision-making process. And so we're asking for a modification of that policy as applies to this specific project. Because again, we don't believe that some of the polls will aid in the decision-making process. We are proposing to provide some additional visualizations that we do think would help in guiding this policy. So I'd like to go to page 2, advance to page 2. And what you're looking at is a PowerPoint presentation that we utilized in our last open house presentation to our neighbors that we had on December 3rd. It was our 8th open house presentation for this project. And this is a summary, an image of the original approval that was granted back in the late 60s. And just the one thing I would emphasize on this particular slide is just to note the topography. So you have a lot of topo lines there. So it's kind of the way the topography works. For instance, residents on Broadway generally cannot see our project and cannot see the project that we're proposing to rebuild. Residents on Wood, some of them are affected, but again, a lot of view lines are limited for this project. Second, next slide. So this is kind of what we're proposing to do, is effectively rebuild on the same property. I'm going to go to page 7, ask you to go to page 7 now. So as I mentioned, we started doing open houses back in 2018. That was our first open house number 1. So again, we had our 8th open house just last month. We plan on continuing to have these open house sessions with our neighbors throughout this entire process. We are targeting coming in front of planning and back to town council for our proposal in the 3rd quarter of this year. So if you could please advance to slide 24. So this is one of the visualizations that we've, this is actually a visualization that was included in our very initial presentation back in 2018. We've made some refinements to this, but generally it has remained the same. If you see on the left side, this is what the view looks like from a part of Main Street, not too far from Town Hall. You can see the Los Gatos Meadows project there in the middle of the slide. On the right, you would see what it looks like with our proposed project. I want to just emphasize here, you can see by the way that the topography works, that most of the building that we're rebuilding is behind that facade that you see from this angle, and that is the case from many other angles as well. So Mark Falgout's going to dive into that in a little bit more detail. So if I could have you go to page 32. So this is where I'm going to hand it off to Mark Falgo. So the blue, I'll have him explain the different colors here. So Mark, with that, I'll let you kind of take the baton. Mark, I think he has to raise his hand. Is that right?
Yes.
I'm not hearing anything. Okay.
My name is Mark Falgo. Thank you, Mayor and council members. I'm the civil engineer for the Los Gatos Meadows rebuild project. I'm happy to be here. As Frank mentioned, just a quick explanation of the slide. The blue dots are the story pole locations per the policy, and you can see that nearly every corner of each building would get a dot. The red dots are the proposed pole placements, along with the flagging that we would string from pole to pole. The idea being that we would cover the highest points on the most public facing buildings. So the perimeter of the buildings that face Santa Cruz Avenue and Broadway Avenue. Noting, like as Frank mentioned, that many of the story poles behind those, or the buildings really behind that line, would be hidden by those buildings, by trees, by topography. So they wouldn't really be visible to begin with. We feel that these locations will maintain the integrity of the story pole policy, while still marking the most visible locations of building corners from the town. So now I'd like to introduce David Gates, who will talk a little bit about visualizations.
Okay, David Gates is also, okay, thank you. Yes, if we could move David Gates over. Mr. Gates, you have to unmute yourself.
I think I've done that, right?
Okay, yes.
Okay, I'll be brief here. So the intent, good evening, everyone. Happy to be here. I'm the landscape architect on the team. So our goal is to, as your ordinance explains, is to give a sense of the volumes and the mass of the proposed architecture. And where those red dots, you can see, if you squint, you can see dots on the corners of what are really 8 components to the architecture. These are sort of a village architecturally, and they sit on a garage, which is buried in the ground. And as Frank mentioned, a lot of this architecture is tucked into the topography. So we will mark those corners. We'll run the flags from corner to corner. And from that, we will calibrate, if you could go to number 33. What we'll do is, and this is an illustration, so it's not actual, but you saw from Frank earlier the view from Main Street. And our proposed building sits kind of in the middle center of this. So upper left is existing conditions. You see the existing facility. Number 2 is the poles and the flags you would see at each of the proposed corners of those 8 architectural volumes. Number 3.
Excuse me,
Number
time is
3.
up.
Sorry?
Yeah. So Mr. Gates, your 5 minutes, your collective 5 minutes is up. So if you could wrap up.
Okay. So the last 2 images, number 3 shows you we're recalibrating the architectural elevation based on where the poles and the flags are. And the final graphic is we'll take the architectural elevation and render it in to where the poles indicate the actual elevation sits.
Okay.
So it is a hybrid of your normal pole story process.
Okay, thank you. And if I could ask council members if you have any questions of the team. Councilmember Hudas.
Thank you. I just wanted to understand the extent of the exceptions. First of all, it looked to me, just counting polls, it looked like you're requesting to eliminate about 80% of the required polls. Is that correct?
I don't know if you can hear. Mark, are you still on the line? I think you're probably best for taking the point on that.
That's a pretty good approximation, yes.
Okay. And then if I may have follow up, in your letter, you state that you're concerned about damage to the improvements by placing the poles. What is the extent of the damage that's anticipated?
The poles will because they will be on the existing site, not the proposed site. The slide showed the proposed site. So what would happen is some of these poles would be mounted on rooftops. Some of them would have to be strapped or nailed to sides of buildings because they're going to sit on the existing facility. And so that could cause damage to the existing facility.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from council members? Okay, seeing none, thank you to the, oh yes, Councilmember Hudas.
Yeah, I just had a couple others. With regard to responding to the neighbors, in the letter, you express that that the polls would result in unnecessary nuisance to our neighbors. Is there any evidence of that? The only thing I see are 3 letters from neighbors saying that they oppose the exception. So is there any evidence that there are neighbors who are concerned that the polls would result in unnecessary nuisance?
Laura, are you on the line? Would you be comfortable taking that question? If not, I can. I think, give her a minute.
Okay, it looks like we're going to have to move her over as a panelist as well.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor Syak and Councilmember Hughes. Laura Worthington Forbes with Kindling Court. We've had several community meetings over the course of the last almost a year now, where we have not received necessarily comments with respect to nuisance, but there has been concern just on the number of poles that have been erected for other projects in town. And I think the primary issue here is not necessarily the number of poles or the height of poles, but the placement of poles over time as well. So based on the heights and location of where we're proposing the poles, the intent is to really concentrate on the areas that will be most visibly prevalent for those with a public view towards the site. So again, trying to minimize that impact over time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other council questions? Seeing none, I am going to ask any attendees who would like to speak on this matter. You may do so by raising your hand. Okay, I see no hands raised. So I will close the public portion of our and go back to the council. If you have any additional questions, if anyone would like to share their thoughts on the matter, and eventually a motion. Actually, I do have a question of staff. So I just want to make sure I understand the staff recommendation. Of the 4 exceptions that the applicant is asking for, 2 are specifically stated in the staff recommendation, number 2 and 4. Is that because 1 and 3 you don't support, or you're neutral?
Staff simply was just including language from the policy, which talks about the threat to public safety. We didn't address the other 2 outright in the staff report and really left that up for the council for the discussion, since the policy leaves it at their discretion.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, any comments? Councilmember Badami?
I'll make some comments to move the discussion along. I'm having trouble validating some of the reasons for the exception. One of the reasons for the story polls is so that the public can get an idea of the massing. So it's not just the building heights, but the potential massing of a project, that having all the story polls would tell a story. We did require it at the North 40. We do have neighbors that are concerned about it, that don't consider it a public nuisance. I'm concerned that we're eliminating 80% of the required polls. And again, I'm having trouble finding the compelling reason that it's a public nuisance, or that it would be a threat to the public health and safety. But I'm interested in hearing my fellow council members' comments that could persuade me otherwise.
Councilmember Hughes?
Yeah, I share some of the concerns. We had difficulty in creating a story poll ordinance, and it's not perfect, and exceptions are needed sometimes. The exceptions typically that I've seen in the past are ones where there's a small portion of the visualization that wouldn't be achieved through the elimination of a story poll. The issue here is that the view of this, and I've been to the site again recently, is from a number of perspectives, and it is generally hidden by foliage, but we know that some of that will come down and will take time to replace. And so I've found it very useful to visit a site and see story polls. And I think the netting adds a little better view of the mass of the buildings as well. And for those reasons, I think that the exceptions are just too much here, and that we will not really see what this looks like. And I have to, weigh in on the comments of neighbors, particularly Ms. Southern and Mr. Southern, who live nearby, who I think ask us to apply the ordinance that we have. If there's a need to change the ordinance, maybe that's something that should be considered, but this is what we have to work with right now. And it seems that eliminating the netting and eliminating what could be 80% of the polls will not give our residents the ability to envision how this will look. So I would be opposed to granting the exception.
Vice Mayor?
So my thoughts, I'm sympathetic to the idea that, putting all the poles up would be excessive, since a lot of the building in the back is not going to be visible. I mean, we're really, is it massing when you're standing in the middle of it, or is it massing when you're anywhere in the neighbors, and what does it look like? And they're arguing that, from where you can see this, you're not going to see most of the poles. I am struggling a little bit with, the poles are going to create a lot of damage, and their concern is, well, if we don't approve this project, they're going to have a lot of repair to do. So I'm sensitive to that. What I'm struggling with is, it really is a lot of poles that are being removed. And I know the Southerns have a concern, but I don't have I thought maybe they would speak and I could ask the question, but I don't have a feel for where their house is and coming from what direction. I didn't get a chance to go up recently to look from all the different directions. I have been up there, and I know, poles in the back may not make sense, but is the Southern's house, is it up above on wood somehow, or is it down below on the left side on wood? And should we have more poles on the left? So, I guess I'm looking, I don't look at it quite digitally as, is this the right number of poles, or do we have to require all of them? It seems like maybe there's some more poles that should be added, but I'm not sure I'd say all the poles have to be added, because again, that's a lot of extra damage to the building that is far beyond what's needed. So that's where my thoughts are at the moment.
Would anyone like to make a motion? Councilmember Hudas.
I would ask if the applicant were interested in a continuance to address some of the concerns that were raised. I would be open to a continuance on this. Otherwise, I would probably need to move to deny it.
Okay. The beauty of Zoom is that while I don't want to reopen the public hearing, I would appreciate a nod or a shake of the head from, okay. So I see a thumbs up. So given that, Vice Mayor, I will turn to you, but then Councilmember Hudas, I may go back to you for a motion. Vice Mayor.
So I just want to add to what Councilmember Hudas said, about a continuance. I do think it's kind of a good idea. Again, I thought there was going to be more discussion and I would learn a little bit more, and it all kind of went by. So I was a bit surprised, but I would like to understand better, and I guess maybe I should go visit the site to understand. The applicant really gave us the far away view, but when you're up on Wood Road, have we covered everything we need to know? I don't have a good feel for that at all. If you're on Wood Road and you're looking over at this site, how are the poles covered? So as Commissioner Hudas is suggesting that they go back and address concerns, I'm adding this as a concern. I'd like to understand a little better from some of the other neighbors. Before I've kind of looked at it from Broadway, definitely looked at it from Broadway, and I can see that I don't see how those neighbors can see anything. I haven't studied it well enough from Wood, and so I either need to personally go study it or ask the applicant to provide more information in a continuance about, how's it going to look from that side, and ask them to think about whether maybe some additional poles beyond what they've suggested would be necessary.
Okay, so not to put you on the spot, but I will. Councilmember Hudas, would you like to make the motion?
Sure. I move to continue this to a date certain. Would be looking for staff for a date that we might be able to accommodate this, with the direction to provide better visualization than is being proposed here, potentially providing closer to the required number of story poles, and also to consider using the orange netting as required in the ordinance so that it is visible from a distance such as Main Street. So those would be the suggestions that I would have in asking for continuance.
And Councilmember Badami?
I second the motion.
Okay. And Vice Mayor, did you have the comment? No? And so Mr. Paulson and Ms. Shootman, just do you have any questions on the motion and the second?
We do not, and I would suggest that it be continued to February 16th. And if they don't have their package ready to respond, then we would just continue it from there to another date certain.
Okay, so I would then go ahead, Councilmember Hudas.
I would include the date of February 16th.
Okay. I will agree with the motion. I do want to give the caveat that town manager and I have not yet looked at what items are on our docket. And so while that February 16th may provide enough time for the applicant, without knowing what other time sensitive items we have, let's say at least as early as February 16. And as the community development director said, if it needs to be continued further, we will let the public know as soon as we have that information. Okay, that being said, I'll call the motion. Councilmember Hudas.
Aye.
Councilmember Badami.
Aye.
Vice Mayor.
Aye.
And I also vote aye. The motion passes for continuance. Thank you very much. And if we can ask Councilmember Risto to join us again. Okay, we are now at our last item for the evening. And we are item number 8, to discuss and approve the following actions to continue the town's support of economic recovery and community vitality in response to COVID-19. Ms. Wren, thank you for joining us and walking us through the very comprehensive report that is before us.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. As the Mayor stated, you did get quite a comprehensive report this evening, and I will try to keep my presentation pretty brief. And then know that all of our staff team is here to support you in your discussion tonight. Before you this evening is an opportunity to continue the discussion around economic and community recovery and vitality. When the pandemic hit last spring and we all realized it was going to be quite a long journey for our community, our council took action to offer support and flexibility, allowing businesses to quickly pivot, to provide rent forgiveness, and a variety of other things to really just show as much support as we can in a time that's really much bigger than all of us here. So because of our the council's quick actions, Los Gatos was an early adopter of temporary parklets for outdoor shopping and seating. We had other streamlined items that piggybacked on the work that they had been doing over the last several months. And unfortunately, tonight we're back. The pandemic is still with us. And so we're here to kind of talk about what's next. Are there other tangible items that the council would like to adopt? We did put out a call to our community, asking them for some items and ideas. Some did come forward in your desk items in your addendum. We also may hear from folks tonight. So again, staff's here to support that discussion and whatever the council may need. I quickly wanted to walk through the recommendation and just make a few quick points for the council. The first is that we're asking, would you like to continue the rent forgiveness? As you may be aware, we took a street fund of about $2 million and we transferred it over, the council did, for economic recovery. So everything that we're talking about tonight that's taken place and that we're asking for your guidance on will continue to come from this bucket of funds. The first was rent forgiveness. We're asking if the council would like to continue that till the end of the fiscal year. Next, we're looking at some options for business licenses. While many of our sectors are still doing well, we do recognize that some sectors are completely shut down right now, such as our hairstylists, our nail technicians, some personal services. They they really aren't allowed to work based on the state and county guidance. So we have some options in your staff report tonight to consider some forgiveness until that's lifted. Next, the Parkland Incentive Program. I quickly want to talk about just a couple of definitions here for us tonight so that we're all speaking the same language. Parklet has been used for so many months here in town in so many different ways, and I think it gets very confusing for staff. I think it's confusing for the community. So for the sake of our conversation tonight and in the staff report, there's two types of parklets. There's our temporary K-rail parklets. Those are the ones that we see along North Santa Cruz Avenue that were a direct result of COVID and were part of our economic recovery resolution. So those are temporary, and those are the ones that we talk about looking at a sunset date on. Next, we have semi-permanent parklets, and we use the word semi-permanent because back in October, the town council considered our parklet pilot program, and it was a 3-year program at the time. They really stopped short of calling it permanent based on the fact that we do intend to do a streetscape program at some point and redo North Santa Cruz, but at this point, there's no end date in sight, and that parklet program is no longer what's considered a pilot. So we're using semi-permanent. It's been quite confusing in my conversations with businesses in the community because there really is the lack of understanding of what that means. So for the sake of this conversation, those were the two things that I tried to use to keep things straight. We're looking at a grant program for you to consider this evening to offer a little bit of relief as businesses consider building those out. And we talked about the sunset. At the very bottom, we're also, or the bottom of that recommendation, we're also looking at what you'd like to do with Gray's Lane, if that too would like to become semi-permanent, and so that those businesses that are adjacent there do have the same ability to build a parklet, and that would then be absorbed into that parklet program. Finally, in the recommendation D, there's kind of a list of items there for you to consider. I quickly wanted to touch on number 3 and 4. 3 is that we're absorbing half of all conditional use permit fees right now. This has been huge for me as I talk to new businesses who want to come in, and even existing businesses who need to modify what they're doing. While the economic resolution does allow for an agreement to be put into place for many of the modifications, what we found is most businesses really want to take this time to do the modification in their use permit, and we're really looking at the longevity of their business and how they can remain successful in Los Gatos for a long time beyond recovery. So this has been one of the biggest things in my work with the businesses that I think has helped us both retain and attract new people here. Next, removing the limit for the 10 personal service. Both of those two items are already in our economic resolution, and the sunset date and the limit of 10 were both only part of the conversation that council had, but we felt that it was appropriate that we brought that back for you to discuss tonight. Number 5 in the recommendation under letter D talks about allowing up to 5 new non-restaurants. So this would require a modification to the resolution, and you have it attached to your staff report tonight. We've seen an uptick in market type places that would like to come in, really looking out into the future, understanding that it's going to be a long time before A, folks are allowed to be eating indoors, and B, they're really comfortable doing so. So I'm seeing a lot of businesses trying to utilize outdoor space, which is the encouragement behind the parklets, and then looking to really modify what they want to do with their businesses. So markets is one that's come up a lot, and they'd like to be able to serve cocktails and beer and wine to go with these market type meals. And then finally, number 6 is something that we've done in the past. It's been really exciting. And so we've done some conversation and thought it might be a nice opportunity to bring back some of our industry professionals to do a joint study session, to give an opportunity to hear really what is going on now in the economy and what we're looking to see, who's leasing, what does it take to lease, and how is that playing field really changed since we are in the middle of the pandemic. So with that, I'd just like to close out again that staff's here to support you this evening. We thank you for taking the opportunity. And I really want to point out that above all, I think we all know this, but really the health and wellness of our entire community is important. So that's why we brought all of these things forward to you tonight as a package, considering the businesses, considering the community, considering our tenants, and all of the stakeholders here that make Los Gatos so great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wren. And I want to echo that in addition to not only what we're doing with economic recovery, there are things that staff has been doing within their purview that does give flexibility to our residents as well. Because as you said, it's all of us are having hardship, and so our youth, and I know several other people within our community, we are trying our best to provide maximum flexibility to give people some glimmer of normalcy as we try and return to pre-pandemic times. I do have a quick question. Can you just expand why we would need to change the resolution for to-go cocktails? If it's part of their menu, why do we have to do something specific for that?
Thank you. So it's actually not addressed in the resolution at all. It's addressed in the streamlining work that the council did, I think it was 2018-ish, when we took our conditional use permits for restaurants down to the DRC. We were very specific in saying restaurants. And so we do have like Old Town, for example, has a conditional use permit on the use of just their patio area. And so because they were not within that definition of restaurant, they would need to go to their original deciding body, which was council. And so it's the same thing for a market.
I see. Okay, thank you for that. Council members, other questions? Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Probably just a couple for now. One of them, you talk about where the private commercial parking lots and a semi-permanent rather than sunsetting after the economic recovery resolution. My concern is, there's some things that are disruptive, and now is an important time to allow a little disruption, but to allow them to continue. And I'm going to use the noisy gyms over in the Downing Center as a good example. I keep getting email complaints about that. And, it makes sense to me that we allow them to do the gym outside. But as COVID settles out, it makes no sense to me to continue torturing the neighbors when people can and are more willing to be inside. And this gives really no smart details about things like that. Has staff thought about this at all?
Thank you. That's a great question. And you're right. I didn't add details about the group classes. What I was trying to capture in the staff report was really some of our centers are actually working with staff right now to build parklets themselves within their parking lots to expand on dining. So there's a couple of new restaurants going in where Blossom Hill, where Whole Foods is, and they're working with staff to use a couple parking spaces to build out parklets. And that's really what I was trying to address in the staff report. I made the assumption, which probably, I shouldn't have done, that group classes would go back in as soon as they possibly could, as that's the atmosphere that those companies really thrive in.
But people might like to be outside, and they might decide to keep it there. And the way this is written says they could.
And for the sake of this conversation, I would recommend that we do split that conversation in half. If it's a group class or something similar like that, I would think those do need to sunset when the health orders allow it. Maybe even before the resolution goes away, but really when the health order allows those to be back inside, I'd recommend they do indeed move back inside.
Okay, and I have a second question, which may be a little harder for you to answer, Ms. Wren, but it's, I think, mentioned at once and maybe twice in here. You talk about the council may wish to consider the identification of other revenue sources in future budget cycles. In this particular one I'm looking at, the Save for Downtown Streetscape redesign. I worry that that's a bit of just a flippant statement, because I personally am struggling to think where these sources might come from. And I don't want the council to think that we can easily go find more money. Mr. Keown wrote an email to us about for future money for CIP, and his numbers may not be exactly right, but the trend is correct that, we normally get extra money for CIP or other good projects from excess revenues over expenses. And our forecasts are going forward, you know, they don't look so good for having excesses anytime soon. So that's certainly, you know, that's where we've gotten a lot of our money from, and we've gotten some money from sale of property. Well, there's not a lot more property to sell, and we've been having the same kind of, if I could just go on a little more, we've been having the same kind of forecast for a while, and the council's done some things along the line to stay ahead of it. In 2016, we increased the TOT tax. In 2018, we added a sales tax. In 2019, we annexed properties that put another $1 million into our revenue. So we've had this problem of expenses growing faster than revenues, and we've done changes, but I'm worried that we're running out of bullets to stay ahead of this, and to just have comments to say, well, you know, we can go find another source is a bit flippant. And I'm sorry to put this on you. Maybe you want to turn it over to the town manager for an answer.
Yes, Ms. Pravetti.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Mayor. It was not intended to be flippant at all. It was really just an acknowledgement that this is still perhaps a long-term goal of the town and the town councils, but we're not going to get there overnight. As you so aptly said, you know, we completely appreciate that our capital program has no dedicated revenue source, that we are reliant on surpluses to create opportunities to invest in our community. And so we wanted to point that out because there may be some members of our community who aren't aware of that. And it is certainly within the purview of the council, perhaps not tonight, but I'd be happy to work with the mayor if at a future meeting you would like us to explore what those other revenue ideas are. There are some. Staff have already started to identify them, but we didn't want to sideline the conversation tonight about that longer term project. Instead, we really wanted to stay focused on the immediate term relief that we can provide to our business and residential community, and then also some medium term actions. But we don't want to lose sight of the long term, because I know a lot of you care quite deeply about the character of our streetscape and the need to give it a refresh idea. So we wanted to put it out there as a future discussion topic. And then, of course, if it's the will of the council to perhaps seed that longer term project with a few dollars from this economic recovery fund, we'd be happy to do so. So we just didn't want to lose sight of that bigger goal that council has articulated now for quite a number of years. Thank you.
That's all my questions for now, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hudas.
Yeah, I had a couple of clarification questions now. I'd like to hear from the public on some of the more substantive things, but I'm just trying to understand on page 9 of the staff report, the second bullet near the bottom. Are we suggesting a different treatment for parklets in these locations in commercial parking lots than we are suggesting in downtown? And if so, why would that be different?
Thank you. That's a great question. So the difference between the two is that when we have the parklet program downtown is a public-private partnership. So we're saying you can build this, come to us with the application, we will allow you to use the land. You know, if you check all these boxes. Obviously on private property, we can't do that. We can't just say, go ahead and build it on your private property. So many of the shopping centers are built in a way, and you may remember this, I'm sorry if it's repetitive for you, but where the parking credits match what they have in the uses. So what the resolution did is the economic recovery resolution allowed us to reduce the parking requirements so that folks could have temporary places to either dine, to have group classes, or to offer space, outdoor space. And we were very vague on purpose to say that just either ample parking needed to remain or it needed to be safe. So in the case of some parking lots, there's no ingress and egress. So right now we're allowing them to use the whole parking lot with a tent or with an area. obviously moving forward, that may not be what the council would like to see. So we had kept them separate so that they could be discussed separately and treated separately. We can certainly allow for the semi-permanent parklets, to go into private places, to remove that parking and to stay for a long term. That would be, I think, ideal for a lot of folks, but I didn't want to make the assumption that we were going to reduce parking requirements forever in private lots, during this recovery discussion.
Okay, thank you. I had a couple other questions about CUPs.
Sure.
On page 10 of the staff report, near the bottom, it talks about the difference between an ERA and the CUP. And my question is there a provision to transition a CUP? I mean, what happens with all of these become non-conforming after the ERAs expire?
Exactly. So they become no, they do not become legal non-conforming. Excuse me. The economic agreement that goes into place stays in place with that business owner. So if I put an economic recovery agreement into place that allows me to, expand something, if I were to sell my business, it's non-transferable like a CUP. So it goes away. And then the new owner is now responsible to understand whatever the rules are in place in that moment in time. So I'm very careful when I explain this to the businesses so that they understand this. If they have the means and the idea to do a CUP, that's where the 50% reduction really comes in, because it gives them the ability to do that and to make that change permanent. But for some folks, they really are not in a position to invest any funds right now. So we've been using this agreement as an avenue for them to make adjustments and adapt, but it is in no way permanent and would not go on to the next owner.
Okay, well, what about for the current owner for a period of time, could be a long time? Is this considered non-conforming after the ERA has expired?
Yes. So if I'm a hairstylist and I open my own salon under an ERA and the pandemic goes away, as long as I'm the person still running that salon, then I'm not going to be kicked out when the resolution ends. But I can't sell my salon without the next person getting a CUP if it's required at that time.
Okay, and I had one more question, if I may. I appreciate the economic impact to the town of being written in the staff report on page 103 of the document, page 12, I guess. But I didn't see a number for the CUP change. Is there an economic impact to the town of the change in CUP and allowing more business to operate without the CUP?
I guess it would depend on what the business was. So if it's a personal service, there's no sales tax being collected unless they have a retail component. So we, of course, don't get the application fee, but in essence, the application fee is to put them through the process. It's not a money-making avenue for the town. So in this case, for personal service, unless they have a large retail component, we wouldn't be losing money on that business or losing revenue. And I guess you could argue that it's a vacancy is filled, so it could be generating customers. But that's all, again, up to assumptions.
Okay, so the CUP itself is minimal economic impact, is what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, correct. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, Councilmember Risto. I changed my gallery view, sorry.
No problem. Thank you. I wanted to follow on with Commissioner Huday's question about the CUP. In the list on page 12 of the report, I don't see a call out for the 50% reduction in the CUP fee. So with a 50% reduction in the fee, there's still 100% of the cost, right, in terms of a hearing and everything. So can you give me an approximate value for what that would be per CUP?
Sure. So the majority of our CUPs, actually every CUP that has come through that's it's taken advantage of the reduction at this point have all been development review committee. So they're the least of cost of the CUPs. The majority have actually been modifications. And so we do those at time and material anyways, and then we've been paying half a time and material. So those are about 1,000 or less, maybe like 750 is what we absorb for each of those. I think we've done, this is totally off the top of my head, but I think we have done about 4 or 5 modifications and maybe 1 new CUP. So a new CUP at DRC is about 5,600. So we have absorbed half of that, and we would use the economic recovery fund to then reimburse that department's work.
Okay, great. And one more question, if I might. There was also a mention, and I don't know if you can answer this, Ms. Wren, or for the K-rail rental, it's about $10,000 a month. And what I was wondering is, as we're moving toward going from the temporary parklets to the semi-permanent parklets, and those K-rails are not necessary, is this a lump sum, like, as we take K-rail out, as a new parklet goes in, does the K-rail get stored by Parks and Public Works and it all goes back at the end? Or if people accelerate through and we only have a few residual K-rails till the end, does that reduce the cost?
I'm going to let Mr. Morley take that.
Thank you very much for the question. Yeah, so we have been stockpiling K-rail mainly because we've had so many changes along the way and we wanted to be able to react. But following the discussion tonight, we're likely to send back 2 truckloads worth of K-rail that we don't need at this point. We need to put it into bundles of a truckload at a time to make it economical to send it back. But that's what we would do. So we'll have a reduction on that $10,000 amount unless we foresee an increase in additional parklets.
Okay, so to clarify, the $10,000 a month is for all the K-rail we have in the town right now, including what's stocked up by Parks and Public Works and what might come out if someone started a parklet right now.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I was going to save this till later, but we're working on the little column of costs on page 12. In here, you mentioned semi-permanent parklet grants for 300,000. You have 30 of them at 10K. 30 sounds like a really big number to me. Are these all in the downtown district? Or are you counting some somewhere else also? Let me start. I'll let you start answering there. I might have a follow-up.
So unfortunately, I don't have the number exactly in front of me, and I'm going to get that in just a moment for you. But I believe we have 30 some businesses utilizing parklets right now. So what I did in the report was, if all of those decided to build a parklet, that includes where there's a cluster together. So if you look at where North is and the Sushi and Kudatai, I'm calling all 3 of those out as 3 separate. So it would really, I'm going to look it up so I can give you the exact numbers, but that was my estimate if everybody took advantage of the opportunity that is taking advantage of it now.
And maybe the follow-on question is, do we really want to allow 30? And I think there's going to be some discussion from the public on this also. Have we, when we started semi-permanent parklets, it seemed like we were going to get 2 or 3, and we'd feel really lucky if we get 5. And now that we're talking about 30, it's a very different picture. If we intersperse 5 around town, it's one thing. If we start allowing 30 of them through town, it's a very different look. And it's a little bit about planning or just allowing things to grow organically, right? And has staff thought about maybe we should step back, and if they're going to be semi-permanent, that means it stays for a long time. Should we be thinking about planning where we really want them or do not want? And has staff thought about creating more of a plan, a streetscape plan we'll call it a medium-term streetscape plan, not the 10-year where we need 10 million one, but do we have some sort of, this is kind of aiding us in improving our streetscape, but do we have any kind of plan to direct this?
So for the sake of this conversation, I was really coming at it from an economic recovery, and then a community kind of vitality where there's the ability for the community to feel safe and be outside, shopping, dining, whatever it may be. So because of that, the recommendation included the ability for everybody to have that. It would be up to the council to decide, which businesses could, which businesses couldn't. In some cases, where I think I touched upon it in the staff report, and it may have been a bit confusing, is my hope would be that where businesses are adjacent to one another, they would all go in together and they'd create one bigger one. We do have some applications in right now, one in particular for a restaurant that is neighbored by 2 other restaurants. So having each person have the ability to have a grant then means they could come together. So from the outside perspective, we see 1 parklet, but the inside perspective would be 3. So it's really the purview of the council of how you want to do that. Staff was not looking at it strategically where they would go, given that some businesses would end up with 1 and some businesses wouldn't. And I think in this time of recovery, we were coming at it from how can we support everybody equally? How can we give everybody the same opportunity, knowing that our community is likely going to want the opportunity to be outside as much as possible. So with the direction from the council that came last spring about removing all of the parking and whatever was left to just use it for, quick turn express pickup, then that was really the angle that staff was considering this at. So if there's other direction, we certainly could go back and come back to it another day.
And the discussion, I think, where it needs to go, and maybe we wait till after public comment, is where do we start getting in? Where's the difference between recovery and long term, right? If we're really thinking about the trade-off between keeping the temporary K-rail up versus creating something semi permanent, and the longer we keep the K-rail, we're spending $10,000 a month. If we quickly convert to semi-permanent, we don't spend that per month. But in terms of a recovery, do we really need to go to semi-permanent now versus just keeping the K-rail longer? And maybe that's not really a question, but something we want to discuss after we hear public comment.
Town manager.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vice Mayor, for those questions. I think the number 30 was really kind of that worst case, not worst case, but maximum case number. So that way the council would know of the remaining money that's in the Economic Recovery Fund. If everybody wanted to participate, what would that dollar amount be? I don't think we would ever really see all 30 of them come forward, quite frankly. So this was really an outside budget number, so that way you could work your way in. We don't have a strategic plan right now in terms of staff preference for parklet locations, the semi-permanent parklet locations. I think we do want to allow it to happen organically. There are a lot of factors still, even with the $10,000 grant. It still costs money, and a lot of our businesses are really hurting. And so I'm not sure we're going to, I don't know what kind of interest we're going to see, but at least a $10,000 contribution would be a big help. So I don't think we're going to see all of our street locations occupied by semi-permanent, which will give us the flexibility to continue to plan and maybe think of some other ways to enhance vitality within the community. But again, as Economic Vitality Manager Wren mentioned, should we see a lot of interest, we would be happy to come back to council and later on in the spring and say, we do actually have 25 applications. What do you want to do? who do you want to grant the opportunity for a semi-permanent parklet? So if we find ourselves in that place, we'd be happy to come back for your consideration. Thank you.
Yes, Monica Wren, and then I'll go to Councilmember Badami.
I just wanted to give you the numbers. I was counting quickly while the manager was speaking. So we have 43 businesses right now utilizing 25 parklets, and that includes University, Main Street, North Santa Cruz. So total K-Rail parklets are 25, and there's 43 businesses utilizing those, just to give you kind of a reference of what's out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Badami?
Staying on page 12 of that staff report, right underneath the 30 parklet grants for the 300,000 is the health order signs that are being addressed. So my question to staff is, what is the intent of that? Is that to have A-frame signs that get knocked over like I've seen on the trail that get tossed over the fence? Or are they going to be freestanding on a pole? Can you just give us an idea on that? Because I think that might be debated later on. And we've had some interest from the public.
So I'll help with this one. So it's likely to be a combination of signs depending on where we're at. We do have extra staffing committed to the downtown right now, so that should there be A-frame signs that need to be set up, we can do that on a sort of a daily basis to make sure that it's stays presentable. In other locations where it makes sense, we'll put them on poles or affix them to a fence or something along that line so that they are less likely to move. We really will use whatever makes sense for that particular location.
Thank you. I did have one other question, if I may, Madam Mayor.
Yes, please.
And this is for Ms. Wren. We talk about the Gray Street closure, and I'd like to know your definition of placemaking.
So when the Grays Lane closure, thank you for the question. When the Grays Lane closure was originally adopted back in January of last year, this is well before COVID, we had talked about it being a 100% public park for placemaking, where folks could come and gather and, just like they would in Plaza Park. It was an opportunity halfway down the street so that there was a gathering point that then made this other stores in that area a draw. And what the recommendation here is to actually just absorb it into the parklet program and then maintain a thoroughfare. So there would still be some public area in that parklet if you do adopt this, to allow folks to pass freely between the parking lot and the sidewalk. However, it would be mostly taken up by the private parklets, and we would ask then that those folks maintain that.
Okay, one other question, and it may be another staff member that may need to respond, but can we get some elaboration on the number and type of complaints associated with the closure of Grays Lane? It was brought up earlier in the evening during some of our commission interviews, and there's been some concern with activity at that location. So have we had complaints? What are the type of complaints and the number of complaints at this placemaking place?
I'll speak, Manager Pavetti, would you like to take this?
Yeah, let me help you out with that one. So ever since we put in Grays Lane, we've had certain types of complaints. So it started with noise complaints. People were concerned about activity happening in Grays Lane, and we address each one, as they arise. So we do have our noise ordinance. We've reminded musicians that they need to comply with our noise ordinance. And so those were really the beginning start of the kind of complaints. In more recent weeks, I'd say really in 2021, it's really been more about mask wearing, that people are gathering and not wearing masks. And that is a lot harder for a town that has essentially 3 officers and 1 patrol sergeant on duty at any time to essentially take care of the public safety for all of our 13 square miles. So mask complaints are a little bit harder. We really have not been, we do not have the staff capacity to issue citations for people who are not wearing masks. Today, we did remove the town's furniture from Gray's Lane. So we are taking proactive action to limit gathering while COVID is still raging. I know our numbers are starting to look a little bit better, but we really wanted to make sure that as we address and deal with complaints, we use all the tools in our toolkit to our availability. But I think, outdoor activity, people gathering and talking, these are the types of things that we deal with all the time in Los Gatos. And it's really finding that balance point. We are taking another look at our noise ordinance. And that might be something that comes back to the council for consideration. But all in all, we really haven't gotten that many complaints from Gray's Lane, considering some of the other complaints about music happening in other locations within our community. Gray's Lane has been, it's only really been in the last 2 weeks, especially with the mask wearing, that we've really gotten this uptick.
Thank you.
And I would just add, it's not just limited to Gray's Lane. I mean, we get complaints about gathering and mask wearing at the Plaza Park, at Blossom Hill Park. So it's not just limited to Gray's Lane where we receive those complaints.
Thank you.
Council, any other questions? Yes, Councilmember Risto.
Yes, Ms. Wren, I just wanted to, for my own number counting, you mentioned that there were 43 businesses using 25 K-rail parklets, and I should know the number, but how many semi-permanent parklets do we have installed at this point?
We have 5.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's correct.
And that is used by 6 businesses?
Well, I do think the one that Centonove has, there's Centonove and Zona Rosa has one that's kind of split by the crosswalk. I'm not sure what the agreement is with the tenants internally and who uses what during what time. I do think there might be some crossover, but I can't speak directly to what their internal agreements are. We try not to get into that as the town. We just make the agreement with whoever's building the parklet.
And that is one parklet?
We did process that as 2 applications because it's actually divided by that crosswalk. And then we have one at Pizza My Heart, one at On Delay, and one at Rootstock.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so let's begin our public testimony. And so for those in our attendees list who would like to speak, just please raise your hand. And one by one, we will bring everyone over to speak with us. Just a reminder, you have 3 minutes each, and you may get some questions immediately afterwards. And then afterwards, council, we can continue our conversation. Jim Foley.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Honorable Council and staff. Jim Foley with the Los Gatos Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. I just wanted to thank you guys and commend you for supporting the business community with these ongoing efforts and all of this conversation. It's really important. It has played a big role and it has helped tremendously, obviously, throughout the pandemic. So thanks for continuing to have these conversations. They're of utmost importance. I know you received a letter from the Chamber of Commerce, and I don't want to go into that in a lot of detail. Hopefully you had a chance to read it in your package. It's pretty straightforward, and I really hope that you embrace the recommendations that we have there. But I did want to highlight a couple of things. First off, I think it's our belief that recovery is going to happen very quickly. We saw that happen in June. There's a lot of pent-up demand as far as, the people that are going to come back and patronize the businesses. That's something we're not afraid of. What we really want help with that hasn't been something I think the council has been willing to do before is to speak up to the county. We need to get the businesses open quickly. The response that they have provided to the problem is it's not equitable. I know we're having a spike right now. I know, COVID is a real thing, but it's just really hurting the business community with the way that the county and the state, for that matter, have kept us closed. So if there's one thing you can do, I think the first thing, before we get into any of these details about programs or anything else, it's really to engage with the county board of supervisors, the county health department, and try to be vocal on behalf of the business community that we need to find a way to safely open. We had a lot of guidelines. There's been a lot of work put into this. Everybody's willing to do that. And we just need the town to speak up on our behalf and say it's time to take some steps forward, whatever that might be in the next few weeks. I don't have a lot of other time. I think the parklet program is critical. I think the semi-permanent parklet program is the key to the future streetscape. If you can run with the design that we already have in place, it's a good design. It's successful. You can then embellish it later with a landscape and lighting plan and potentially widening sidewalks in certain areas. But I think that's a key to getting it done without a huge, long, expensive project. And the last thing I'll just leave you with is I think the parking study recommendations and the general plan are two things the town is very well equipped to step on the gas. If you can get those done, it will really bolster and help in economic recovery. You guys know how to do it. You're well trained in that, and it's something you've been doing already. So I would just express, do that quickly, and that will help almost more than anything else. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You do have some questions, so if you could hold on for a second, Councilmember Gatos.
Thank you, and thank you for the chamber for all of the outreach and ideas from our business community on this. I just wanted to maybe just take a little more time, since the letter of ideas for consideration, the numbered list differs a bit from the vitality recommendations from the town staff, and just give you an opportunity to highlight the items that are not covered in 8A to F of our staff report. I think you mentioned a couple quickly, but I want to make sure that there's a good understanding of what those are, those additional items.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I don't have a side-by-side comparison here of our letter versus the town staff report, but what I do know is that in our list, the first and most important thing was the first thing that I discussed, was trying to get a little bit more support, engaging and communicating with the county and further the state. And if we have specific questions on how or why, I'm happy to elaborate. The Chamber of Commerce, along with the Silicon Valley Coalition of Chambers of Commerce, has been engaged directly with Jeff Smith, the county executive, with Sarah Cody's office and such. And, to the extent that we can fold more representatives from the town into those conversations, that might be, something that could be helpful. So the channels of communication, I guess, are open, and what we're asking for is maybe some more collaboration. I know that you as a council and staff also have conversations with those same individuals. I don't know that the topics are shared topics that, that we're also discussing with them, but, maybe that's something that we could work on together. I don't know. I believe the second point in our list was specifically on the parklets and how that folds into the future of the streetscape. I think that there is in that particular item, there is a little bit of a difference from what we recommended versus what staff had put together. There's a lot of ways to make the sausage. I think the point is to incentivize the businesses that have already experienced success with the parklets to take the next step, which is to go into the semi-permanent program. And how do you do that? Offering them support, money, guidance. I think the town can certainly fill a major role with that. But I also think the chamber is equipped to reach out to the business community, to encourage them, and then to help them kind of get it across the goal line, for lack of a better term. And then I know we talked about the Dixon study and the recommendations of the parking program. I think that's a no-brainer. I think the town does too. I know it's begun. You've looked at the recommendations. It's maybe going to get into the strategic priorities next meeting or in the work plan. But we wanted to highlight that because that goes right along with the parklets. As Councilmember Rennie pointed out, if we start losing a significant amount of parking inventory, where do we get it? Well, there's all this black magic around the parking and how it works and people parking twice or whatever. But if we do reduce the inventory, to me, it makes sense. Let's pick it back up. And the Dixon report has all these recommendations on how we do that. So let's not hesitate. Let's keep that moving. I believe number 4 that we had talks about, accelerating the general plan. I know that's very difficult. There's a lot of work and there's a lot of discussion happening weekly, if not daily, on the general plan. But I know we lost a year. And if there's any method of paying the consultant, expediting fees, really nailing the calendar down to make sure that all the noticing periods are really as short as they can possibly be, focusing the EIR, whatever it might be. If we get through the general plan quickly, that's going to unlock a lot of people looking for opportunity to do projects where new businesses can be located. So getting recovery going and stimulating the economy is shortening that time frame. So shorten that down as quickly as we possibly can. I don't know if it's feasible to cut it in half and get something done by June, maybe early fall, but certainly not all the way to the end of the year. And then I know that we also talked in there about, potential reductions in fees. And I think that was in the staff report, working with some people where business license fees are of utmost importance, trying to waive some things. I know it's hard because the town suffers when it has a loss of revenue just the same way that businesses do. But, sometimes for someone, a business license fee might be ultra important where they would never be able to afford a parklet in the first place. So it's totally irrelevant to them. So I think that, I know Catherine Summers is going to be speaking. She'll weigh in on public comment. She can fill in some of the gaps of some of the things I've missed and maybe some of my other counterparts on the board. But hopefully that kind of answered. And I appreciate the extra time to kind of embellish on what our thoughts are. And if you have more questions, of course.
Thank you very much.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Mr. Foley, last week I had separate conversations with Supervisor Ellenberg and Supervisor Simidian, and I approached them asking about a grant program that, when I spoke to them, they realized that I realized that what you really want is just to let you stop holding you back, right? Allow the businesses to start operating, but in absence in their ability to do that, they created a county grant program. And Supervisor Simidian said normally we don't support businesses like this, but he and Supervisor Ellenberg felt this was an extraordinary situation. When I spoke to Supervisor Ellenberg, she also said that there was a number of business resources that are on her district website and the county's website. And she said her chief of staff was going to send me some links to those. I didn't get them yet. Are you aware of these resources, and can those be helpful?
I'm not familiar with your list of resources, but we had conversations dating back 6 months with Jeff Smith regarding the idea of doing a $100 million grant program to support the businesses. Basically, the theory is, well, if you're going to be the authority that closes us down, what are you going to be able to provide for us? And lo and behold, 9 or 10 months later, after these conversations have started, I believe they did roll out a grant program. Frankly, we told them not to. We just said, what are you doing? You're creating, they had to talk to banks and underwriting, and the PPP program is kind of cumbersome. It's getting a little bit better. And I think businesses are able to take advantage of it. I'm hopeful that the $100 million is able to, I don't know how many businesses exist countywide, but an awful lot. And I hope that moves the needle for some of them. But our comments to them were, it is far more important for you to look at guidelines to safely get us to open, or requirements. We talked a lot about indoor filtration and, unfortunately at the end, a lot of it felt like lip service to us, but, we are aware of the program, and it's at least something. How attainable and how quickly it is attainable, I am not sure. I wish they would focus more of their efforts on supporting safe measures to let the businesses operate, because then it takes a lot of the question out of their hands rather than throwing money at a problem that may not do a lot or last that long.
Okay, thank you.
But thank you for I would like to know the list of other resources Supervisor Ellenberg has. So thank you for bringing that up. And that's something I think at the chamber we can disseminate to the membership and hopefully the rest of the business community too.
I'll follow up and try to get that list.
Councilmember Hudas.
Just a quick follow-up. Regarding the grants, I know that the chamber can't speak for all the businesses in town, but do you have an idea about your membership and how many of them are able to take advantage of PPP, which requires retaining employees?
You know, that I don't know that. That might be something that maybe a good question for when Catherine Summers is on here to be able to answer that. But it is a good point that you raise is, you know, these credit facilities being offered and these Band-Aids. I mean, at a macro level, it all works really well. Everybody gets some free loans and some money, and it pumps it back into the system, and we're all live in a vacuum until the virus is gone, and then things get forgiven or paid back or whatever, and then everybody goes along their way. But, you know, your point's well taken. What about everybody that had to lay off employees and now they're relying more heavily on unemployment, and they may not be eligible for PPP again? And here we are in Santa Clara County in California, suffering a lot more than, say, Florida or Texas, or even outdoor dining being allowed in the snow in New York City, all places that have very similar case rates to us and similar death rates. And I think, you know, we understand the holiday spike, and I think we're looking for a lot more aggressive movement, you know, from the powers that be, you know, coming into the next month or two to see how much, at this point, it's how much can we salvage. We really had the ability for a lot of people to avoid this 2 weeks before Christmas. And unfortunately, the decisions were made that really crippled everybody. And now it's how much can we salvage? Who's going to be able to come out of it, which is a really sad place to be.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Thank
and
you.
My last question to you, Mr. Foley, is as I mentioned earlier, you may not have heard our remarks. The Cities Association, all 15 cities in Santa Clara County, we meet monthly, as well as a representative from the county. COVID-19 and business retention is one of our priorities. If you commit to bringing a Chamber of Commerce member from each of the 15 cities, I can commit to getting a joint meeting between us. So.
That's fantastic. I think, again, that's something I think Catherine Summers also, she is part of that coalition directly as the executive director of the chamber. I won't speak for her, but I think it's a fantastic idea, and I'd like to see us put every effort to making that happen. So appreciate the offer.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Sue Farwell.
Hello? Are you guys
Hello?
there?
Yep.
Yeah. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, fantastic. You guys have my letter that I had written, and we all hate redundancy, so I'm not going to read it again. Just try to keep this short. I do believe it is imperative for you guys to act immediately. You also need to act equally for the benefit of all businesses with these grants for the parklets. The existing parklets, the 5 that are there, should not be excluded from your grant monies. And if you can get 30 parklets going forward, you should be the happiest council in the history of Los Gatos. That means we've got 30 businesses that survived this COVID crisis. Parklets are not cheap. They're very expensive. The grant monies is a great starting point. But again, you need to be fair to the pre-existing parklets and the future parklets. You need to continue with the reduction of the fees for the permitting process for both planning and building. And you really need to work towards a more expedient building permit process. This is one issue that is a holdup for many businesses, retail, offices, and restaurants. And I want to address Mr. Rennie's comment on the 30 parklets and what it might do to the streetscape. The parking plan that we have, or that was done for the town, was a great resource, and there's many ways to immediately create parking spaces by implementing the employee parking program. That is a simple, relatively cost-free way to gain parking that will allow us to have more parklets downtown. And as we've all found out, everybody wants to eat outside. We've known that all along. It's been in the town's motto to let's eat outside. We now have the ability to do it. Let's not stop it. Let's let this grow. And I do believe that the parklets that are designed are a great starting point for the town, and could easily be adopted and can easily be uniquely made unique by each business, with the furniture, with the umbrellas, with all the things that go along with it. And I implore you to act for everyone equally, fairly, and act tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Farwell. Any questions of Ms. Farwell? Councilmember Hughes.
Thank you for your comments in your letter. In your letter, you go into a little more detail about the inequity with regard to businesses that have provided ADA access versus those that haven't. Does the proposal in the staff report tonight, the items A through F, do they address that concern, or is there something additional that needs to be done to address that?
On A through F, is that the grant monies that would be used for the parklets?
That's all of the items that are listed for us to consider that are in the staff report, including parklets, and other measures as well.
I'm actually not looking at that document A through F. The ADA upgrades for the temporary parklets, those are minimal amounts of monies, but it's still in the thousands of dollars. And there's many restaurants that have went ahead and made their ADA compliant temporary parklet at a cost when they had no money. They were borrowing money from family. They knew it was the right thing to do to make these temporary parklets ADA compliant and safe. And they should be reimbursed for the monies that they spent early on in this pandemic that they didn't have, that now a parklet that may have waited is now going to get funds from the town to make these ADA compliant. Everybody in business is, there's no money to spare. And so paying it forward is a great thing, but it should be paid backwards as well.
Okay, thank you. We can follow up on that later.
Okay.
Any other questions of Ms. Farwell? And if staff, if I can flag that ADA issue after we close public comment, that'd be great. Okay, Mark.
Hi, greetings. This is Mark Millen. Thanks for the chance to address all of you tonight.
Mark, we lost you.
You got me now?
Yes.
These phones. Anyway, I agree with a lot that's been.
Mark, stop touching your phone.
Boy, I hate this thing. Anyway, I have a primary concern, and that is I'm not a supporter of the permanent parklets, but I understand some people like those, but I'm very concerned that they're really harming the street parking and really harming in the long run businesses if we get too many parklets and not enough street parking spaces. But the other point I wanted to make is we have tenants who the only reason they have a temporary parklet with the K-rail is because of the county's occupancy regulations relating to the COVID issue. and they don't want a permanent parklet, or perhaps they can't afford $50,000 or $100,000 for a permanent parklet. And I'm concerned that putting an arbitrary date on the termination of a K-rail parklet for a business that isn't related to their ability to use the occupancy of their space is very unfair, because someone may say, look, I don't want or need a permanent parklet, but this K-rail parklet, while my occupancy is cut to 0 or 25% or 50%, is the only thing allowing me to survive. So I would just caution you, you really should be careful about forcing people to choose between spending $50,000 or $100,000 they really don't have, and like I said, the parking issue is of great concern, and I'm sure we'll have a great conversation about that going forward. But I just urge you to maintain some flexibility regarding the longevity of the K-rail parklets. Thank you.
Any questions? Councilmember Hudis?
Thank you. It sounds like you're quite familiar with the commercial and business landscape downtown, or actually around town. The question I have is that if the parklets become mostly permanent, does that benefit the retail that's going on, or is it really only or mostly affect the restaurant business? And is there a possibility that having that the visibility of the retail coupled with the lack of parking could impair our ability for the retail segment to recover when restrictions are lifted?
I think those are very legitimate concerns. It's probably fairly difficult to quantify the issue. I certainly have some of those concerns with my own tenants, where some of them want to extend either parklets or street seating to block, say, a currently vacant spot, which is fine so long as it's vacant. But as soon as a retail tenant moves in, that seating's got to be moved. And so I think your concern is well taken. The difficulty, and I think that some of the prior speakers addressed it, is that things are really bad in the business community. This is a very difficult time, and with very little foreknowledge of what the people at the county health department intend to do, it's difficult for anyone to make permanent decisions at this point that might last 5 or 10 years to the detriment of the town. And I would just urge some caution and some flexibility, and avoiding any hard deadlines to do this or to do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Donna McCurry.
Hi, good evening. This is Donna McCurry, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Chamber as a staff member. An integral part of the economic recovery and community vitality response is to offer an exciting downtown experience to our town's most valuable resource, its residents. This can be accomplished by the town staff and chamber working collaboratively to plan community events once they're allowed and create a downtown ambiance that is welcoming and inviting. Our residents are loyal patrons of Los Gatos local businesses. They are invested in the town's success, and they are the most effective public relation and advertising firm in the Bay Area, and they're free. Through their friendships and work connections, they spread the word of the amazing restaurant they just had dinner in, the great outfit they purchased at a Los Gatos boutique, or the fun downtown vibe they've experienced. There is no better resource to help the Los Gatos recovery and turn Los Gatos into a destination location than its own residents. So what would this look like? Community events can take the form of art and wine festivals, family picnics and games, and the end of COVID celebrations. Ambiance can be enhanced by the installation of music in the Town Plaza Park and along Santa Cruz Avenue. Streets that are well maintained with a regular trash pickup service and street cleaning. Sidewalk planters that showcase seasonal flowers and plants. Parking lots that are clean and well marked, and simple directional signage to navigate the downtown area. And finally, implementing phase 2 of holiday light installations. The current light installations were very well received by the Los Gatos community because they created excitement and energy. It was just unfortunate that we could not realize the full effect on our businesses because of the shelter-in-place order that halted outdoor dining and pedestrian traffic. While the changes seem simple and intuitive, they will require financial support to implement. Chamber and town staff should work together to establish an events and ambiance plan that sets aside a portion of the remaining downtown streetscape fund. The road to recovery starts with addressing the needs and perceptions of our own residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McCurry. Any questions? Okay, thank you. John Shepherdson.
You hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Earlier I mentioned the signage, and I think it was Councilmember Rennie mentioned that was item number 8. So I looked at item number 8, and that's with public health order signage and light upgrades and streetscape. My signage was road signage, and so let me elucidate that or clarify it. What I meant is the signs that we have in the middle of North Santa Cruz Avenue, for example, in the middle of the road, it just says like street law or it's just that sign there. What I'm talking about is on top of that, a little yellow reflector. And I emailed to the council members a picture of that because I found that in Saratoga when I was riding my bike over there. So that's what and I think it dovetails with a lot of what the speakers are saying, because I think we all agree, and I think it benefits business. If the downtown is safe, then more people will come, elderly people, families, kids. And so something like that with that reflector, I think is a lot of bang for the buck. It doesn't cost us a lot, but it's another way of making it safer, because we know we all live and work in town, is that some people drive quite fast on North Santa Cruz Avenue or on Main Street. So if we add the reflector, it's another element of safety, another reason for people to come to Los Gatos because they feel it's safe. Something else that I just throw out there, I'm kind of brainstorming on the mask issue. I mean, we may have this COVID issue for another 6 months. Maybe we give out free masks. So if people come and they don't have a mask, maybe we have certain dispensaries where they can get a free mask. Wouldn't cost very much, and it would take away the excuse that they don't have one. Maybe we need to put one near Grays Lane or near the trail or some other location. On the K-rails, I just mentioned this, when I was going through Saratoga, they have K-rails, but I think they were water-based. And I'm imagining those are a lot less expensive. Now, I'm not sure on the safety issue. Maybe it's safer to have the concrete, but it might cost quite a bit less to have K-rails that are water-based. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherdson. Any questions? Okay. Seeing none, Randy Chen.
Good evening, Council. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I feel like that MCI commercial or whatever it is. Anyway, Randy Chen, Los Gatos Chamber of Commerce. You'll see we've all taken a little part of this, so this is my part. As you've seen, Los Gatos residents are very concerned about being safe and protecting each other and our businesses. And the Chamber is willing to collaborate with the town in another poster or sign campaign, much like the We Got This LG or the Protect LG campaign. And this fits perfectly in the staff's recommendation of item D1, which was the $2,500 for public health order signage. The We Got This LG, much to our surprise, took on a life of its own. And our second campaign, the Protect LG, with the mask wearing and social distancing, we work collaboratively with the town to create and to put up those Protect LG signs. And now we're ready for the next iteration of that. We would like to work with you to create the next message It could emphasize celebrating our local treasures, shopping local, mask wearing, or some other inspirational or encouraging message. We found that consistency works best, so we're excited to hear your ideas. And hopefully this campaign will take us to the end of the pandemic. And that's all I had to say on that. But regarding a few other items, the resource list that Supervisor Ellenberg was talking about, I'm guessing that we have all of those on our website. The county sends us out every week an email. I'm sure you all get it as well. And we update our website accordingly. So I find it hard to believe that there are any resources that we haven't already sent to our members or have on our website. And the grant program, just so you all know, depending on your budget, the top dollar amount was $25,000, and it's working with the state California Relief Fund. So for instance, the chamber only qualifies for a $15,000 grant. So at any rate, hopefully that answered some of the questions that you guys have had. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chen. Any questions? Seeing none, Catherine?
Good evening, Council. I'm here, actually, I've kind of changed my comments after listening to everybody else, and I am here to answer some of the questions that were brought up earlier. I wanted to thank you first, though, for reviewing our Chamber's recovery proposal. After submitting it, I thought about it all weekend long and, was kind of watching what was going on in the county and the state. And I do want to reiterate what Jim Foley said, that our number one wish, I guess, for you right now is that you will help Los Gatos open for business. Other counties are beginning to reopen, and I think it is time that we follow their lead. Every day that we don't open another business is one day closer to closing their doors for good. With regards to the Chamber Coalition, we've been advocating for the safe reopening for months now, and I think their biggest concern is that when the state reopens, that the county will still hold us back. And so I think that we need some further discussion on that. Secondly, I wanted to zero in a little bit on the parklet program. While I'm a huge fan of outdoor dining and the parklets and everything else, I think that the program itself needs a little bit further thought, conversation. And as I've often suggested, we need some expert advice. And now's the time that I think we really should consider having an urban planning consultant come in. I think a lot of the questions that we're asking ourselves can be answered by somebody who has worked on projects of this magnitude before. I agree with what Mark Millen said, that we need to have some flexibility here. I'm not really sure if we need to sunset the temporary parklets at this point, because I think that will put a lot of stress on a lot of these businesses that are just trying to survive. I think when we first discussed economic vitality, and this is what I think we should all go back to, and specifically the downtown streetscape, you need to ask yourself again, what was the original goal? What problems were we trying to solve? And what did you envision? I still think that we can get to those. Maybe we have limited resources and we have to go about it a different way, but I don't think we should scrap that whole plan of a downtown new streetscape. I think we can still get there, but I think we need some help so that we can build a town that a streetscape and have a plan that we're all really proud of. So I'm going to stop there, and I can answer any questions that you might have.
Questions, council members? Councilmember Badami?
Thank you, Ms. Summers. Thank you for your comments, and I appreciate your recommendation of getting an urban planning consultant. And so my question to you is, we have a desk item from Phil Cohen or Keown, I always mispronounce his name, and it's a parklet program that's been put on by the city of San Francisco that's very thorough and very well done, and probably done by an urban planning consultant. Have you had an opportunity to read through that desk item? And there may be some 40 pages to the attachment.
I have actually read through that, most of that whole proposal, and I've also actually met with Phil about it. And then subsequent to that, I've reached out to a few other urban planners to discuss it. The difference, of course, is that that plan is for a big metropolitan city where they have a lot of space and they can do more of the public parklet idea. I think in Los Gatos, we have found kind of through a little bit of trial and error that the public-private partnerships do in fact work here. And I think there's a space for placemaking, kind of, like the Grays Lane idea. And there might be other places that can be strictly for the public. But I think in terms of creating that outdoor dining scene, we should stick to the public-private partnerships, if that answers your question. So I've reached out to that group. I have not gotten a call back yet, but the chamber would really like to take the lead on meeting with some of these urban designers. I think there's so many questions. I mean, I had so many phone calls this weekend from people that had different ideas, and they were all great ideas. You all have great ideas. The staff has great ideas, but we really collectively still don't know what to do. And I think we should ask for some advice and help and pay a few dollars to get that help.
Thank you, Ms. Summers.
Councilmember Hudis, and then the Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Summers, for all of the work that the chamber and your staff are doing in presenting these ideas. And I also want to thank you for being flexible. I understand that the chamber has multiple types of businesses and multiple opinions about what to do on things, and I appreciate it, your ability to recognize that. And so I wanted to just ask two things. One, following up on an earlier question, in terms of grants and funding, do you have an idea about how many of the businesses in town, members of the chamber, your members, are able to take advantage of PPP, which I believe requires retaining their employees?
Great question. And I'm glad you asked it again. I met, it is my understanding after meeting with a few business owners this past weekend, in fact, that many of them do not qualify this time for the PPP loans. And it is because they have furloughed their staffs. There's another reason for it, and I'm going to get this wrong, and I'd love to follow up with you on it tomorrow. It is because of the amount of sales that they have still been able to generate and not have any staff. And, then there's there are multiple other reasons. I mean, for example, the spa at Los Gatos is the one that comes to mind. She doesn't qualify for any grants at this point, or grants or loans or anything, or loans she can get. But it's just there's a interesting thing going on, and I need to, she actually suggested that we do a survey of our members, which we plan to do. And I would love to go over it with you before I send it out to all of our members, or just to the, the general business community. I think we'll get a lot of answers from that, but I think it's more difficult this time around for people to
I think it would be really helpful to have some data on that as we
Yes.
look at potentially allocating much larger funds to recovery. And as you know, I feel that we're talking about business and business recovery, but we're really talking about workers and employees who are part of our community, and so it's really important to understand, what's happening there. The other question I had what related to the recommendations on the parklets, and the concern I raised with Mr. Millen, in that as business opens up and picks up and we get outdoor dining again and the parklets are being fully utilized, does that in some ways, by taking away the parking spaces and having less visibility, make it almost a negative for the retail businesses? that are behind. And is that a reason for looking at the configuration of the streetscape?
Well, number one, yes, that is a definite reason to have a urban planner come in and tell us if too many parklets may take away from the, from that, the sight line, I guess that was what you might call it, as well as to look at the parking and not even just, a few parking spots, and maybe they wouldn't be parking spots, but maybe they would be delivery, drop off, pickup. I have always envisioned that we'd have a Uber and Lyft delivery, a specific place for Uber and delivery drop-offs in town, and so I think those are things that we need to consider when doing the whole streetscape, and we can do that in the next year. It doesn't have to be 10 years down the road. You can create other more open space on the sidewalks if you looked at some of the planter boxes that we had, and if you removed those. So I'm saying you can create space that I don't think we've actually recognized that we have. In terms of parking in general, I as you know, I'm a huge fan of the Dixon report, and I think with by working with the business owners, by having the correct signage, by reconfiguring some of our parking lots and some of our residential parking agreements, I think I'm a believer. I think there's plenty of parking. And that's, I'll stand firm on that. I really do. And I think through this COVID pandemic, more people have turned to riding their bikes and to walking. And I think it's really opened up a lot of possibilities. I just think we have to be very clear and have excellent signage as to where people can park.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. So Ms. Summers, you said you kind of studied the San Francisco model, and I was trying to understand the financial model difference between them. The San Francisco one, it's a much more public model than ours is, and I think you said that San Francisco pays for all of the parklets rather than the private paying for it, or is that the case? If you know,
that is yes. And I'm getting a couple confused here, but if I'm not mistaken, San Francisco has paid for those parklets in full, which is why they are open to the public 24 hours a day. Now, I don't know whether or not the restaurant that is, and in fact, in some cases, the parklets are not necessarily in front of a restaurant. So multiple restaurants share the use of that space. But in the San Francisco case, it is their public works department that cleans, sanitizes, does everything in the parklet. So you put that onus back onto the town. In our case, part of the beauty of our private public partnership is that our businesses have taken, that responsibility. So, I think we have to be careful when putting, be it 15, 25 parklets on the cleaning schedule of our Parks Department.
What about ABC license? The way we've done it, it seems like the town has been able to stay out of the ABC license issue.
Yes, that was one of my questions actually for San Francisco, because I'm not sure, and I think all ABC rules and regulations are more lenient right now during this COVID era, but I know that one of the reasons we did the public-private partnerships, and Monica can probably speak to this, is because we were able to skirt around some of otherwise hard ABC rules. And I don't exactly know all of the details on that, and maybe Monica can elaborate. But I think that was one of the reasons we did these public-private partnerships, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Hudis.
Yeah, and as a follow-up to your comment about the San Francisco, and I believe I've seen model from Philadelphia as well. In the case of the way parklets are being implemented, the temporary ones as well, the K-rail ones as well, if we're asking the businesses to shoulder part of the cost and responsibility, is there any reason why they shouldn't have the first right to use of that space? I mean, should they, if they're paying that cost, should they accommodate the public as equal to their customers?
I think they should have that first right to be able to serve their customers, especially if they have spent upwards of $50,000 to create or to build that parklet. Again, though, the reason I mentioned doing other placemaking spaces or other areas like Gray's Lane, and I think Gray's Lane, you know, we are selling it short right now. I think we could put a parklet in there for, you know, the establishment that's there, and possibly one on the other side for a new restaurant that's going in. But we could really create a real park, like, you know, it would be small, but really for the public. And I think those, and I think there's probably other spaces in town where we could do that as well. And that would be purely public, purely the town's, you know, solely the town's responsibility to keep it clean. But it would allow for people to get takeout and go and sit there, or to bring a picnic, or, you know, moms, you could have a little mom's class and everybody in it with their, you know, babies and strollers. I mean, I think there's so much potential. So I think there's a combination of both that we can do. But I think the ones that are in front of restaurants, in our case, because it's a small downtown, I think the public-private partnership with the restaurant taking responsibility for it makes the most sense.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Summers. David McGregor Scholes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and council members and staff. My name is David McGregor Scholes. My wife and I own the retail store Redemption in downtown. And I also am currently the president-elect of the Los Gatos Chamber of Commerce. I'd just like to echo the thanks to all of the council members and staff for their support of the business community so far through all this situation. I am speaking tonight to urge the town to support the Chamber's proposal and work with us to get our business community safely reopened. The bottom line is that the town needs to be ready, so that as we enter each tier, we are able to safely adhere to the reopening restrictions as soon as they are announced. We've been through this once, so we need to use that experience to be ready to go on day one, so that our businesses have the best chance at recovery. Pushing the supervisors to stay in line with state restrictions is part of this. Small businesses and members of the public, they're going to operate in the way they want to or need to feel safe. I mean, we're probably going to keep our mask restrictions, sanitizer, even maybe capacity limits beyond when we're given the green light to not do so, just until our staff feel comfortable. But again, the businesses need the option and the opportunity to operate in the best way that they can in order to recover. If we are prepared and ready to implement all of these relevant safety processes on day one, then we have the potential to once again be the beacon in the area for how to move forward and hopefully stay open this time, as opposed to going back and forth. So the Chamber, obviously in the letter, you've all heard from everyone. We've outlined a range of ways to move forward with this. So I would just really ask you that you strongly consider the proposal and act as best you can on the recommendations as soon as possible, because again, I really think speed is of the essence in order to give people the best chance. As far as the grants that I heard kind of mentioning, I think the maximum was $25,000. We didn't even really look at trying to do that. We got a PPP loan, but some of those grants, it's just not really, it's almost more effort than it's worth in some cases for trying to go through all that rigmarole and then end up with, sometimes that could be payroll for maybe 2 weeks. So it's not really, didn't seem that helpful. We did get a PPP loan. We are trying to access the second one. We haven't got to the stage yet where we can, because obviously we got the first one, and the second round, or the ones available for people getting a second round, hasn't become available yet. On a personal note, as relatively young new business owners in the town, we had a really interesting year this year, seeing what was going on. So we would urge the town to not turn a blind eye to the events and experiences of the past 12 months, and to use them to actually move the town forward, to feel inclusive to everyone, no matter race, gender, ethnicity, all that kind of stuff, socioeconomic background. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any questions? Yes, Councilmember Bristow.
Yes, thank you, Mr. McGregor-Scholes. I actually have a question for you as the owner of a retail business, because I haven't had a chance to talk to you. I've spoken to a few other retail owners who actually feel like, you know, before everything shut down, with the outdoor dining and the visible vitality outside, it actually boosted their retail sales. That, you know, people felt like downtown was alive, it was fun, they were coming down to eat, and they were discovering the stores. I do know that with the Apple store next to you, until they had their parklet where they could set up the line, you were kind of blocked by that. But do you feel like a lot of restaurant parklets would detract from or assist your business?
So interesting enough, for our business model, and I'm sure you guys are aware with the Pastoria next door, she has been phenomenal in her adaptation in working on how to do the next stage of whatever they were kind of pushed to do. And we only ever had one kind of issue with her where her setup was kind of blocking our store, but we worked that out pretty quickly. And we actually utilized that space out the front for our artist and maker pop-ups. So, you know, once or twice a week, we'd have someone out there with their table set up, like kind of just like doing a maker stand sort of thing. So for us and our business model, yes, the parklet works for us. I think the street parking situation, the Dixon report showed that there isn't really a parking shortage in Los Gatos, from what I understand. It's just not exactly where people want it at all times. I come from a city in Australia, in Melbourne, where I would literally park 2 suburbs away and catch a tram or a taxi into the city because I knew I couldn't park in there. So I'm not personally, the idea of having to walk after parking a little way doesn't affect me. And I would actually like to see more kind of loading zones and pick up drop-off areas on the street, because we have the Apple store next door, we don't even have a back entrance. We only have one entrance at the front, so we can't even access our trash cans, which are literally right behind us. We have to walk all the way around to Main Street and all the way back behind our building. So just in general, I feel like pick up and drop off zones, especially going forward with, like Catherine was mentioning, and how we've outlined, the pandemic has changed the new normal. So people will be doing a lot more to go and a lot more kind of not wanting to spend a lot of time probably in one space with other people. So that's what I'd like to see. But to answer your question succinctly, the parklet has worked for us personally, but I can't speak for other retail models.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Scholes. Kevin Youkilis.
Good evening. Wow, I can't believe I'm still up. Just want to say, talk about a little bit about the PPP loan. I know a lot of people are trying to talk about it. We have just filed for it. We are going through it, and we're probably going to get another PPP loan. Evaluating the numbers and talking about them, one of the biggest issues is I don't think people understand how much back taxes all these businesses have. There is a lot of money that is going to be gone immediately from these PPP loans to try to stay within the realm of the 60% for payroll. And we live in Silicon Valley where rent is so high. Okay. So filling out those boxes and trying to hit those percentages are extremely difficult because of where we live. And that is going to be one of the hardest things for everyone that gets their second PPP loans, is to fulfill that. A lot of the rhetorical things that I'll probably say here now and what people are saying is we need to get open. And the PPP loans are great, but if we don't get open, if we don't have outdoor dining, if we don't have a little bit of indoor dining, I know the indoor dining is probably, Q3, Q4, but a lot of businesses are going to struggle in the restaurant industry, particularly. So the parklet things are great. The grant, the $10,000 is a good thing, but the costs that are associated with the parklets are really high. So my fear is there's going to be a lot of restaurants that are going to have to say no versus wanting to say yes and do them. So if there's any way we can push forward to figure out a way to get these parklets for these restaurants, it will be a huge addition, because I personally, in evaluating numbers, I just don't see a lot of restaurants going to be able to do it, even with the PPP loans and the grants that are going to be given out. That's all I have. And thank you guys so much for working so hard for our town.
Actually, I do have a question, Mr. Euclid. The $10,000 grants, what if that's in addition to the streamlined design that staff will work with developers on, so that planning and design is eliminated, and so it really is just the construction cost?
I think it all just depends. I think Sue brought up a good point earlier. They're pretty expensive to build out. I mean, like I said, we're also in Silicon Valley and construction costs. So how much what are the costs associated with the build out? I think that's my question. Does the town have those answers?
Good question. We'll ask staff. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I don't see any other speakers. So I am going to close the public testimony. And council members, I need a quick break. So it's close to 10 o'clock now. So if we could just return at 10 o'clock, and I'll see everyone back here. Thank you. staff. I know the first one, I asked staff to flag the ADA question. And if Ms. Wren could just respond to that.
Sure. So actually what Ms. Farwell was speaking about is a great point, and it's something that we as staff had told the businesses if they wanted to come, we had no control over it. So basically when the direction was given that we should move forward with matching grants for the ADA upgrades on the temporary parklets, which were the platforms, and that was back in October. Council gave direction to give up to 50%, and then there was a cap for businesses who are going to build a platform moving forward. So I think what she was speaking about is some businesses had already built that, and they were asking if they could to take advantage of the grant program, and that wasn't part of the direction. So if that's something that tonight staff, the council could definitely direct staff to go back and do a grant match for those temporary parklets that did put in a platform.
Great, thank you. Vice Mayor.
Mayor, this is really more a process question for you, or maybe I'll call it a request. It would be a little easier for me if we could take these A, B, C, and D each individually and ask our questions for each of those and make a motion or modify, rather than ask a bunch of questions and then try to modify something in B and something in D, and it's starting to get a little late for me to keep track of a lot of the moving parts.
Absolutely, and that was definitely what I was going to recommend. But definitely, when any questions of staff based on what was heard, feel free to ask those now, and then we'll take each motion and each action item separately, questions, discussions, and then motions and clarifications again. Yes, Councilmember Risto and then Hudas.
Sorry. Yeah, I have a question for staff, just a verification that because we're talking about parking, the town is presently implementing the first phase of the Dixon parking study, correct? And we are starting to roll out the employee parking program or initiating it?
I'll start, and then if the chief wants to augment any of my comments, he's welcome to do so. We have somebody working in the police department who has taken that parking study on and has started to do some work. There's been a survey that's gone out. We're working on signage. So there's definitely work being done around implementation of that first phase.
Okay, and then the other thing I wanted to clarify is that part of the parking study, or the follow-up of that, was to look at whether parking on Santa Cruz Avenue could be eliminated, and with the parking lots and the other options that were called out in the Dixon study, would we have sufficient parking? And it was my understanding that we knew, except for like loading zones, that we actually do not need and don't necessarily desire parking on Santa Cruz Avenue. Do I remember that correctly?
So the parking study showed that essentially, yes, we can remove the parking on Santa Cruz Avenue. It does make our lots extremely crowded, so it was not a recommendation to move forward with that as an initial phase, but rather at a later phase when we're able to more control where people are going, how they're looking for parking, how they're finding parking.
Okay, so a follow on to that would be one of the ways to control it is with the implementation of the employee parking program and the signage and potentially all the other parts.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Hudas.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions that are general. One of the things we've heard from businesses, and I've heard numerous times from businesses, is about not just the fees associated with getting permits, but the time. Do we track the time now? Do we know what the average time is for plan check reviews, for instance? And do we know the average time for plan approval for business construction improvements as compared to building a Netflix or something?
So thank you, Councilmember Hudas. We do have timelines in our computer system. We haven't gone in to analyze that. I don't have that information in front of me. I can definitely talk to our building official to see if they have some way to run a query to get that. The reality is that there are a number of different variables depending on the type of project. As you mentioned, a Netflix versus Cabana. Those are going to be different timelines. And a lot of those are also based on a number of factors, including property owners. It's just like, I think you're aware, the planning process. A lot of people talk about the length of time, but the reality is typically when you go look at the timeline of that process, and it is similar for some of the building permit processes as well, a lot of that time is really the applicants responding to the comments and deficiencies of whether it's the planners, the engineers, our building plan checker, county fire. And so there's a number of different factors that run into that. And there is a wide gamut across the board, depending on the type of project. Right now, typically, if someone submits a building permit that goes to our plan checker, it's generally, I think we're at about 6 to 8 weeks for first comments. And then county fire, they do their best to meet those timelines, but they've been going through some transition as well. So it is not a quick process. Moving to the all online process as well, and COVID, not having folks in the office, kind of has added to that time. Before that, we were running, I think, about 4 to 6 weeks. So, it's a couple weeks more. But then the construction process, a lot of times folks will have their building permit, it's ready to be issued, but then it's months before they pick it up. And then they get a contractor, and depending on the contractor, they may be doing multiple jobs and bits and pieces, or they may just be working on that job, or they can go quicker. So there is a number of factors, but that's information I'll talk to the building official about and see if we have any general timeframes based on different parameters or different project types.
Great. I'll save any follow-ups for when we do our strategic planning. But I'm a firm believer that if you don't measure it, you can't improve. And I think there's always room for improvement. So I'm not going to go any deeper into it tonight, but I'd like to come back to this idea about measuring times when we do our strategic priorities. I had one other quick question, and that is the staff report. I think we've talked about page 12 and seeing the costs listed there. I would just suggest, again, if maybe staff could respond, is it possible in the future when we're looking at this recovery issue to see for each fiscal year, the planned, the actual, and the year-to-date, the actual year-to-date and the remaining money in these categories? Because sometimes it's hard to put that together if we can't kind of see that side by side. We're measuring how we're spending money on this recovery project. Is that possible?
We can definitely work to provide more information, and then when the report comes out, if it doesn't hit the mark, if you want to let us know before the meeting, we can do a little bit more.
I'll send you a quick note with my idea of what might be useful.
And I would just add that suffice it to say, we knew that the fund started at about 1.9 million. The current estimate is there's about 1.5 million remaining. So we've expended about 400,000. And you can see that in the staff report, if council were to enact all of these items, then that would be an additional approximate 800,000. So you'd have about 700,000 left.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Badami.
Thank you. Along with Councilmember Hudis's first question, and in line with Sue Farwell's letter about creating a committee to address the building department permitting process, is that something pending Mr. Paulson's input that we could defer to the Council Policy Committee for further study?
So that's definitely something that could go to the policy committee moving forward. I know the policy committee will be meeting next week to talk about work plan items. So that's something that they could consider for their work plan, and we could look at options to try to get the information out there on that process.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Okay, council members, as the vice mayor had already alluded to, if we can organize things, I think that would help focus the conversation a little bit. I'm going to look to all of you to make the motions, but based on the conversation with regard to A and B, the rent forgiveness and business license forgiveness, I didn't hear any comments or questions, so I'm assuming maybe we can get one motion on both of those, A and B, of the staff recommendation. Vice Mayor, and then, well, I see Vice Mayor's hand up. So.
Thank you, Mayor. So I did have a little bit of question on B. I'm okay with the businesses that were included, but what wasn't included was, so what we did is we said, okay, here's certain public service businesses that have been completely shut down, but we have other businesses that have been partially shut down that are not included. Let's say, for example, restaurants. There's been periods of time where, right now they're at takeout only, which is probably 10 to 20% of their business, right? That's a pretty significant decrease. But we're not proposing to give them any business license relief unless their business license cost is tied to the total revenue that they get, and so it'll be much less, and so they get a reduction in that way. And I know in the staff report it talks about our business license was set up by a ballot measure, so we can't like adjust it easily. It seems like it has to be all on or all off. Can you comment? It looks like Monica maybe had some response to that.
I'll start and then get to our finance manager may want to come in, but as I understand it, the restaurants do pay on gross receipts, so theirs would be the sliding scale. It was hard for us to delineate and pull things out. For example, I could say, well, my office is shut down, but I'm working 100% of the time from home, still generating the revenue or still doing the work. What we were really trying to capture is those folks who can't work, who really cannot be doing their business in any capacity. And so that was really how we were trying to define the two. Of course, the council could make other recommendations, and weigh out the revenue that would not be paid. I do think we still see a decrease coming in our sales tax based on the 25% that are gross receipts. And then I'll defer if.
I think that was for Gita, yeah.
Yes. This is Gita Ungvari, Finance and Budget Manager. Good evening, everyone. So Monica already reflected on the retail licenses since it's a gross receipt, so it's on a sliding scale. The area and sectors that we identified, those are the businesses that are totally shut down. And obviously, the council action would adjust those licenses. And usually if a business starts later in the year, we have already a mechanism when they just prorated. And we thought that the very same mechanism can be followed through. If the sector is not open the first quarter, then we would just give the first quarter adjustment. So what happens in reality, for example, hairdresser, they move salons often during the year. Without pandemic, they would come and close the license. So, but we really would like to have the licenses open for those businesses. So anytime if they can jump in and start, they are ready to come. So that's why we thought that would be the best solution, helping them. Other businesses, we try to think about, like massage therapists would be one of the other segments. And we really have to, so those are the two that we were able to identify at this point. And just going back to the question, the ordinance, the business license taxes wasn't changed probably the last 15 years. People are paying the very same amount today as they paid 15 years ago. And so that this is an ordinance that has to go to the voters. So I wouldn't say that it's all or nothing. It's probably really has to redone that that ordinance before it goes to the voter. And I would really refer this question to the town attorney.
So I think in summary, what you're saying is we're sort of naturally already helping the restaurants with business license. So what staff is proposing in B, is adequate enough because we're already helping the restaurants, and what B does is help the others that are completely shut down.
Yes, that's the case. And also with the penalty waiver would be another gesture for people dealing with hardship and paying in time, because according to our town code, every 30 days there is a penalty, 25% penalty up to 100%. The first penalty hits in early February.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Badami?
If there's no further discussion on A and B, I'd be ready to support a motion or make a motion to approve action items A and B to support our business community.
Okay, thank you for the motion. Councilmember Risto.
I'll second that. Could I ask a quick question, or I guess I'll second it and then we can have discussion, but I did have a question of staff that
Yes, please do.
I think that Gita answered the question, but are there businesses that we haven't thought about that aren't covered here? I mean, I'm assuming that you've thought about all the businesses, and maybe I lack imagination. One of the options I was thinking about was the spa, for example, where I don't know what their business license looks like, but they can't do their massages, but they do have retail. What kind of business license do they have, and would they be covered by this?
So the spa owner probably would be covered with a retail license that based on gross receipts. So it would already a built-in mechanism for their license. And the massage therapist would be a professional license. So the first quarter or second quarter adjustment exemption would apply to them.
Okay, thank you. I mean, seeing as we did not have input from businesses saying that this was inadequate or unfair or not addressing their needs, I feel comfortable seconding this motion.
Any other questions or comments on the motion specific to A and B? Okay, I'll call the question. Councilmember Badami?
Aye.
Councilmember Hudas? I think I saw an aye, but I didn't hear it.
Aye. Sorry about that.
Councilmember Risto?
Aye.
Vice Mayor?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. So A and B passes unanimously as contained in the staff report. I now look to C. Now C has 5 different variations and could have more. So who would like to tease C apart? Let's start with questions. Okay, seeing no questions. Yes, Councilmember Risto.
Okay, yeah, there's so much in here, but in terms of approving number 4 under C, approve a sunset date of September 19th, 2021 for K-Rail parklets. That's an extension, correct? I mean, we had a sunset date coming and we're extending it.
What the council had voted on in October was to, yes, extend it until March and then ask the new council for any additional thoughts based on how the pandemic was going. So we just threw this out there as a date that got us through the summer, but you could certainly do the same thing and either have us come back to you or adopt this date, and then we could change it if we need to.
Okay. I mean, I think based on where we think everything's going in vaccines, we're going to be in this for a while. So I'm comfortable with that. We may have to extend it. I hope we don't.
Any other questions on any nuances within the C? Councilmember Hudas.
No, I would just support that. In thinking about this whole program, I think that we need to, wherever we can, increase flexibility and not lock into things, because I don't think we know. Again, we have hopes about how things are going to continue, but I would be in support of the date that's proposed here. because it gives us more flexibility.
Thank you. Councilmember Risto?
Yeah, given that, we don't know where we are, that we had a plan, the town council had a plan a year or so ago to work forward to a streetscape program. We're not going to have a future if we don't keep our businesses alive. So I'm really inclined to support everything. Are we looking at just C? I mean, I'd like to make a motion to adopt all 5 items under C.
Okay, then please do so. Is that your motion?
Yes, I move that we adopt C, approve a parklet incentive program for semi-permanent parklets, and including all 5 items that are listed there, unless
Okay.
I need to read that.
Okay, and if I understood correctly, also with flexibility being the theme.
Correct. I mean, obviously the council reserves the right to extend any of these things or adjust as the pandemic situation changes.
Thank you. And can I get a second? Okay, I'll second the motion. And so questions and comments on the motion as it's basically what's contained in the staff report. Vice Mayor.
The one thinking about this from it goes back to the one where we're talking about possibly ending up with 30 semi-permanent parklets. I'm thinking I'm okay with passing it like this, but I'd like staff to come back at some point with an update, that says, hey, we've gotten 10 more. We're now up to 15 or 20. Or do you want us to keep going? What does it look, and give us an update on what it looks like. Maybe we could add that in the motion, just that we get an update when we get, I don't know, past a certain number kind of thing or time frame. And it looks like Monica has a suggestion.
Yes, Ms. Wren.
Thank you. I'm sorry to insert myself here. The motion does say that the application in order to get the grant would have to be received by June 30th. We could come back to you at that time to let you know how many applications we have, and then we can make it, or you all can make a decision on what makes sense for the sunsetting. Just to give you a little more information, the sunsetting was really in there as a part of the incentive. If the semi-permanent parklets were what the council wanted to drive towards, so that there was something that kind of encouraged folks to move in that direction.
Vice Mayor, does that appease you? Or another option is we could say the June 30 update, or when we hit the halfway mark of 15.
So what I'm hearing is it's already natural that staff, before they approve all the June ones, they'll come back to us to give us an update. So that's part of staff's recommendation, and thus already part of the motion is what I'm hearing. And the other thing I would, it's good to incentivize this, but the other thing I am cognizant of that we should think about a little bit, and maybe we think about it in June, but right now these businesses are cash squeezed, right? And this might not be the point when they can really commit to, if we're putting in 10,000 in the design, they still may have to put in somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000, and this may not be the right time for them. So I'd say go ahead with this, but keeping that in mind, we may actually have less people willing to commit at this time.
Okay. So it sounds like there's no amendment to the motion. Okay. Any other comments to the motion as stated? Okay, I'll call the question. Vice Mayor?
Aye.
Councilmember Hudes?
Aye.
Councilmember Badami?
Aye.
Councilmember Risto?
Aye.
And I also vote aye, and the motion passes unanimously with the just highlight of it coming back in June with an update on the semi-permanent parklets. Thank you. And then in the recommendation under D, there's 7 different ideas. Well, there's actually 6, with 7th being any other ideas. So I look towards the council members for any questions on that and or a motion. Councilmember Risto.
I actually, well, I've been looking at these for a long time. I'd like to move that we adopt all of the items under D, the additional process streamlining. And I think the Chamber of Commerce has done a really great job partnering with the town in messaging. I know that there is a huge request for a mask mandate or encouragement. And I think to the extent that the chamber can collaborate on some messaging that points out this is respect, that I'm not breathing germs on you, that's why I'm wearing a mask. And, these other items here are all part of, creating a positive downtown.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Badami.
Second the motion.
Okay, thank you. Any comments? Councilmember Hudis.
Yeah, I mean, I support the items that are articulated, but the other items part of this, what is that exactly? I just want to make sure I get the right number on that. That is.
So we are under D. It's 2,500 for the signage, 3,500 for lighting upgrades, absorbing 50% of the CUP cost, providing new direction on the 10 personal service businesses, the economic recovery resolution to allow 5 new non-restaurant conditional use permits. That was the market to go that Ms. Wren was mentioning, as well as a joint council planning commission study session to discuss retail trends.
Right. I have actually quite a bit that I'd like to add to that other items part of the discussion.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure what's the right way to do that, but
why don't we, if I may, let's vote on this and then let's take on the new items.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, so, oh yes, Councilmember Risto.
Madam Mayor, I just want to clarify in case anyone's listening. I don't want to criticize. You misspoke. You said 3,500 for lighting. It's 35,000.
35,000.
Just in case somebody raised an eyebrow.
That's kind of key. That's 0. Thank you.
That order of magnitude stuff, right?
Yes. Okay, so I'll call the question. Councilmember Risto.
Aye.
Councilmember Badami.
Aye.
Councilmember Hudis.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rennie.
Aye.
And I also vote aye. So that covers 1 through 6 in item D. And then now I look to council members, specifically Matthew Hudis. You mentioned you had some new ideas.
Yes, I'm supportive of the joint study session, but I wanted to bring 2 other ideas to that. One is to start thinking about new uses in downtown that could help both our retail and restaurant businesses. And that would be considering allowing mixed use innovation type spaces. And again, I would not be prepared to do anything to the zoning right now, but to bring that discussion into our study session. I've had discussions with quite a few folks in the retail sector as well as in the tech sector who feel that we need to start thinking about some new uses that are similar to places like Mountain View or Palo Alto that drive high level business into our retail sector. That our retail sector was not doing well and was actually declining for some time, and that we should start to think about that. And so I would suggest bringing that into the conversation. And then the second thing is the idea that was discussed by Ms. Summers, and that is to look at our streetscape and configuration. And while we've had a couple of anecdotes tonight about this not harming retail, I've had conversations with some retail folks who are probably in worse shape than the restaurant folks. And that's because they don't have the ability to use the parklets to help their business very much. And so I would add that dimension to that conversation, and that is to also talk about our streetscape configuration as we look at the retail trends and the other items I've mentioned. So those are two things that I think belong in the study session. Then I had another item, which is a separate. These are considered other issues, but it's not part of the study session. So I'll hold that for a minute.
Okay. And so I'm taking that is a motion for this addition to the study session. Although I don't really think we necessarily need a motion. I'm looking to Monica, because as you're building this agenda, these are items that can be incorporated in.
Yeah, I can definitely work with the professionals that we get to talk about, what we're interested in learning. And just to be a little bit of clarification, I heard you, Councilmember Hudes, I heard you talk about a streetscape, and then I heard how parklets affect retail. I think talking about a huge streetscape plan may not be feasible in one study session, but are you looking mainly about how the parklets affect that retail and what affects retail from our panel?
Yes, exactly. And I would love to hear from a consultant or other folks about configurations that have been tried. And one of the things I've been reading about is putting the activity up against the building rather than putting it in the street or next to the street. And so one of the ways that sometimes downtowns are reconfiguring is to allow the dining and retail activity to be right part of their building facade that goes inside of their building rather than the way we've configured necessarily with the parklets. And I understand the importance to have the parklets, to have to have restaurants get up and running and get their outdoor dining going. But I also think that we should at this time start to think about a streetscape that makes sense. And I believe that Ms. Summers expressed support for that idea as well.
And Ms. Wren, the other thing I heard was a mixed use, encouraging mixed use business models.
Yes, new uses in downtown and mixed use innovation.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
And then, yes, Councilmember Badami.
I just had a quick question for Ms. Wren while we have her here. And that is, how many emails were sent out to the business community regarding tonight's hearing? Because I'm really surprised that we only had 3 responses for the environment that we're in right now because of this pandemic.
I think I have about 120 or so businesses on my list, and it's the same list that I've used all along. I use it to wish everyone happy holidays. I've gotten responses from most of the folks on different times, so I do believe all of the emails are correct. It went out to everyone who has a parklet, everyone who has ever contacted us. So there were quite a few. We did some outreach on social media as well, and then I know Catherine. She's really great at working with the businesses, and I know she's done some outreach, and she's also collected ideas of her own from folks that ended up in, I do believe, her report. So I'm also hearing that people feel pretty exhausted, so they're out of ideas too. And we did do a lot of outreach. We did try to reach the community, and I think a lot of folks are really just, kind of hanging on right now and hoping for the best.
It's sad. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Okay, Councilmember Hudes, do you have more?
No, but you said we don't need a motion for that. Are we okay?
Well, for the agenda setting, I think a listing, and for what you've provided, it looks like Monica Wren can adapt into either the agenda, or we can build out another agenda. If other council members have other ideas for that study session, please, you can share it today or share with council, with staff. But I don't think that one requires a motion, since that is something that we have approved already.
Okay, great. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is mask compliance as it relates to economic recovery. And We've had several speakers and several letters and concerns about this. And so in my perspective, this is to address the other items relative to economic recovery. And I would like us to really consider that the recovery of the economy is dependent on the recovery of our health. We can't have the economic recovery that we're hoping for unless we see a real decline in the virus. And with only 5% of the population offered vaccines at this point, even if it were doubled, I've read articles that it would take until August for all adults to be vaccinated. And that doesn't count children. There is no approved vaccine for children. So I think that there is still a gap in mask wearing. And, you know, I've observed mask usage in public. We all have. Being a numbers guy, I've been counting noses literally. And I see between 10 and 30% of folks without a mask where I would expect to see them. And I try to see the circumstances that are causing this. And I see, you know, a group of folks who are exercising. I see another group of folks who are trying to eat, sometimes in groups, using the takeout and the ability to do that. And I also see sort of random groups of folks socializing. Maybe they've forgotten a mask, or maybe they're just need to socialize. And unless this improves, these economic measures will not be effective. So I would like to see measures that go beyond education and information and enter into the realm of getting better compliance. Perhaps an ordinance is required. I'm not sure if the county health order is sufficient. And but we need to be emphasizing some of the consequences of not following this. And I know I observed this firsthand in Monterey. We've had people write about Carmel. The signs that look official, that say what the penalty is, seem to work. I mean, the day I was in Monterey, I didn't see anyone without a mask. And so I would like to see perhaps staff bring back some compliance alternatives, whether it's an ordinance or otherwise, emphasizing what is in the county health order and what the penalties are, that address some of the circumstances that I mentioned, the reasons why people are not wearing masks. And I think this needs to be done on an urgency basis, because all of these economic measures, which I think are great, are not going to work unless we get the health right as well. So I tacked it into this because I think it's important. I think there's, I think that it relates to the economic recovery. And I think if we ignore this issue, we're not going to see the recovery that we want.
Thank you, Mr. Councilmember Hudis. I do see Mr. Andrews. And so, Mr. Andrews, if you could just share a little bit about the ongoing conversations we have been having with the county and some of the discussions of things that we are doing moving forward, such as deputizing, and what exactly the county enforcement cooperation will be looking like.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll speak briefly to those issues, but in terms of the actual legality of issuing citations, I think the town attorney could speak to that, because there are questions about whether or not those citations would hold up in court. So real briefly, Councilmember Hudis, I did speak with the city administrator for Carmel because it is a model out there that we were interested in. And basically they're using authority under the current state emergency and then their own proclamation of emergency. They did not do a specific ordinance to do citations. They felt they already had the legal authority to cite within the parameters of the state emergency proclamation and their own. In the last 6 months, they've issued about 25 citations. Their primary goal is still education, and they've issued citations primarily in cases where they see belligerents when they're trying to educate a a person properly. That being said, the 2,500 that was just approved in D1 is because we think we need to do a better job of reinforcing the fact that the mask ordinance is law in our county and that the violation of it could have ramifications. And so Mr. Morley spoke earlier about, where we intend to get signs, but the idea is to get a much greater proliferation of signs downtown, because there's no way a resident or a visitor without a mask on a sidewalk can grant the 6 feet necessary for someone to pass them. So basically we need 100% compliance of masks on the sidewalks. And so we need much better signage to make sure that we're sending that message that, pretty much if you're walking downtown, you need to have a mask on. That being said, I do know there are some legal concerns about whether any of these citations would hold up in a court of law, but I think that should not stop us from doing everything we can to reinforce the messaging in our commercial district. Because to your point, there is no recovery unless we stop having case counts. And if we don't stop having case counts, we will never get back to a 15% ICU capacity.
Thank you. Mr. Schultz?
Just very briefly, I'm not going to go into the constitutionality and whether the courts would uphold those. I can talk to you offline on that, especially in light of the fact if we start to issue citations. But I will say this is already on my ordinance priority list. It's coming in front of you next week, and then council as a whole can decide where they want to put that in that order. But I've already listed this as potential ordinances, resolutions to enforce the Santa Clara County orders or state orders. So then council can make that a priority or remove it from the list if it doesn't want to be involved in this issue. And that doesn't even get into the following issue of enforcement. I would say in the long run, as Arn said, in all the other cities, it's still going to be an educational. It's kind of like we have a no smoking ordinance. We've had that no smoking ordinance on our books now for, I believe, 3 or 4 years, and we've never written a citation.
Yeah, and I'm not advocating that we put an ordinance in place that results in writing a lot of citations or even any. I do think that the clear messaging, no mask equals $100 fine, that type of thing is I think where we need to go. And then you can put, the county order below that or whatever. But I believe that we're in a sort of a stagnant phase in terms of mass compliance downtown. And I think that, the sooner we can improve that, the sooner we're going to be able to open outdoor dining. I do think it's also important that we address the different circumstances that cause people not to wear a mask, and potentially, again, through education, but again, through our businesses, what does it mean to allow you to take a mask off when you're eating? And, what do you do when you're exercising? All those things I think are really important, but I also think that our signage needs to move from the realm of sort of the gentle education to something that has more teeth in it that gets better compliance.
Vice Mayor?
I just want to add, I think there's not complete understanding of when or what times a mask is needed to be safe. There's some that overdo it on when a mask is needed. So there's some education about it. I believe the county ordinance says you must wear a mask if you can't stay 6 feet away from another person, right? So if somebody's sitting in the park eating without their mask, that falls within both science and county ordinance, okay, right? Matthew probably didn't mean it, but it sounded like he's saying if you're sitting in the park eating, you should get a fine because you don't have your mask on. Well, that doesn't match up with what the science says. So, it's sort of a different, it's hard to put all the pieces to this together, but I'm just saying, at this point, I don't think people really even understand what's necessary to be safe, when it's okay and when it's not. And that means that some people err on one side and some people err on the other side. If they want to err on the safer side, that's great, but you got some people erring on the not safer side, partially because there isn't a full understanding of when I really need to be careful and when I don't need to be careful.
And with outside mask wearing, it's the ability or inability to yield 6 feet to somebody who's not in your immediate bubble. And so, to your point, if somebody is stationary in a park and they're unmasked and they're not within somebody of 6 feet when they first pick the spot they're going to sit in, that would be okay under the county order. And that's why I think our focus needs to be on the sidewalks of the commercial district with signage, because it is virtually impossible to yield 6 feet to anybody passing you on the sidewalk. And it looks like the town attorney has his hand up.
Just the conversation is getting way off track. It's not on our agenda tonight to start talking about ordinance and resolutions. As I mentioned, this is on schedule for your priorities and goals. And if it meets a priority and goal of council, then it can come back for that discussion. Because just by the definition of Mr. Andrews, there was at least 500 citations I could have issued in the parks, Bachman Park, the Plaza Park, because although there may be 6 feet from other people, we have gatherings that are not within a bubble happening everywhere. So you need to know the consequences of the ordinance or the resolution. And like I said, you'll be happy to talk about it next week as a priority and goal. And if it is, then we can bring it back very quickly if it's a top priority, to have a full discussion so the public knows that you're having this discussion, because there's both sides that would probably want to weigh in on any ordinance or resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz, for reminding us of the parameters of our conversation tonight. Okay, that being said, any other items specific to economic recovery on today's agenda? Okay, seeing none, council members, thank you. That was a very long list of action items that we all took today. Thank you, staff, for those comprehensive reports, and thank you for all those that stayed with us. Meeting is adjourned. Good night, everyone.